Welcome to the fantasy audiobook. Naruto. I have set my skills to the limit. Chapter 61. Be merciful, these are envoys from Union Village, don't hurt them. Shancheng Qingye was panting and leaning against the big tree, running at full speed from the entrance of the village made his body a little overwhelmed, panting heavily. Shenyi waved his hand to stop Mat Day's next move, and looked at the mountain city Aoba with great interest. It's really unexpected that these short-sighted guys are the guests of Muyu village. That's right, it was indeed invited by the 3 generations of adults, because there are some exchanges between the 2 villages, so. Understood, take them out of here quickly, otherwise I can't control Mat Day's temper. Shanshiro Aoba wiped the landscape on his forehead. If something happened to these guys, he would definitely be punished by Konoha village. These guys are really disappointing, I'll go first. Shenyi got up and left, and walked along the streets of the village towards Shuiman's house. These guys from Union Village were too familiar in Shenyi's mind. It is said that it is a friendly exchange between the 2 villages. In fact, the ninjas of Union Village have other ideas. They have been eyeing the descendant of the Uzumaki family, Kushina Uzumaki. If this matter is not publicized with great fanfare, not only will it not get the approval of the 3 generations, but it will even scare the snake, and it will not be able to catch their true face. There was a knock on the door, and Minato hurriedly walked to the door and opened the door. Shenyi, it turned out to be you. Let's go, I'll give you a chance to be a hero to save the beauty. Minato scratched his head and didn't understand what the hero's chance of saving the beauty was, but he still followed behind Shenyi. The 2 unknowingly walked to the foot of Hokage's office. Shenyi pulled the water door and hid in a place where no one was around, quietly observing the surrounding situation. So what happened? A few guys from Union Village appeared in the village, and the purpose of those guys is not pure, we are optimistic about him. Minato nodded, already knowing that he was doing things for the village at this time, ensuring the safety of the village and eliminating hidden dangers. Shenyi didn't tell the story of Uzumaki Kushina, and in the end he had to find out by himself, with a heart as meticulous as Hokage to discover the problem. The sky gradually darkened, and those guys still haven't come out of the office. It's already at this time that they haven't come out yet. Could it be that they really came here to discuss some friendly exchanges between the 2 villages? Shenyi doubted himself a little, but in his own impression, these guys were obviously the ones who took Jushina away. Finally, in the dead of night, those guys from Union Village left the office and walked out of the village. Minato and Shenyi followed far behind, to avoid revealing their positions and at the same time keep these guys' whereabouts in their sight. But soon they left the village. Shenyi stopped at the entrance of the village and frowned. It can be seen that Qingye of Shancheng is standing at the entrance of the village and watching the envoy of Union Village leave the village. If he follows out of the village at this time, he will definitely be stopped by him. It's you who are worrying too much, Shenyi, these people are already preparing to leave. I hope so, but we still have to be vigilant at all times. Minato nodded, and the 2 agreed that if something happened, they would get together as soon as possible, and then left in different directions. Walking on the road, the more Shenyi thought about it, the more something was wrong, so he changed direction and walked towards the place where Kushina lived. Just after finding a suitable location, Shenyi found a familiar figure leaning against a corner of the wall in the darkness, and couldn't help shaking his head helplessly. This guy said that nothing happened, but he still came here worried. Walking up silently, Shenyi patted Minato on the shoulder. Feeling the sudden touch on his shoulder, Minato quickly turned around and put on a fighting stance, and heaved a long sigh of relief when he found out that it was Kamiya. You came here even without going back. I'm always worried that those guys will appear to be bad for Kushina. It's safer to observe here for one night. I'm fine here alone, you'd better go back and have a good rest. You can't deal with those guys alone. It just so happens that there is nothing to do tonight. Minato nodded and did not refuse. He knew that he had no way to stop Shenyi's inner thoughts, so he had to let him go. Time passed bit by bit, and no one could be seen on the streets of the village, only Shenyi and Minato watched quietly in the darkness. Suddenly, there were some turmoil around, and several figures landed at the door of Ju Shinai's house. Shenyi frowned and looked over. It was the guys from Union Village that he saw during the day, but they had changed into black combat uniforms, and the forehead guard was also taken off their foreheads. Now no one can see that these people are ninjas from Union Village, and they can act as they please under enough disguise. Get up and show up, but don't do it here, you will provoke the ninjas in the village to appear, so you can't kill them. A cruel smile gradually appeared on the corner of Shenya's mouth, and Minato looked at him with some surprise. I don't know when it started, Shenyi's attitude towards the enemy has undergone a huge change, and now he is focused on killing the enemy instead of defeating him. Under the watchful eyes of the night, several guys quietly opened the door of Kushina's house. I don't know what method was used, but Kushina had no ability to resist at all, and was held on the shoulder by one of the strong guys and walked out of the village. Seeing this, Minato was a little anxious, but was stopped by Shenyi. Don't worry, keep a distance and follow them, and do your best after leaving the village. It wasn't until the guy from Union Village was about to disappear from his sight that Shenyi and Minato set off to catch up, keeping the furthest distance to follow. But as soon as he left the village, Shenyi found that those guys were completely out of sight, not even a trace. This is too bad. It seems that they have made sufficient preparations before taking action, so they disappeared easily. Shenyi, what do you think this is? Minato jumped to the ground, and a strand of red hair hung on a low bush. He picked up the hair and put it in his hand to look. It turned out to be the unique red hair of the Whirlpool family. This is the mark Kushina left for us, and you can find it by looking for these red hairs. Minato nodded, and looked forward firmly, as if foreshadowing the battle that had already occurred. The two of them did not jump on the tree trunk and chose to rush on their way, but followed the red hair left on the bushes to find the traces of these people fleeing. The sky in the distance turned pale, but they still couldn't catch up with these guys. If you continue to move forward, you will have left the range of Muya village. If there is a battle there, it will be very disadvantageous to us. We must speed up. But it's a waste of time to travel while looking for hair. It would be great if there was a way to shorten the travel time. Shenyi rolled his eyes and suddenly a flash of thought flashed through his mind, and then he took out a shuriken with a mark in his ninja tool pocket, and slowly wrapped his hair around the shuriken. Minato rubbed his chin. He already knew that Shenyi was about to use the Flying Thunder God technique to hurry, but could he really speed up with red hair? Feel if there is any difference in shuriken. Minato took the shuriken and slowly closed his eyes. Several nearby red hair marks appeared in his mind, but they were only within a certain range, and they couldn't find out all of them. If this is the case, the time for catching up can be greatly shortened. The art of Flying Thunder God. The furthest hair imprint was chosen, and the bodies of the two people were teleported directly to the edge of the bush. There was indeed a strand of hair left by Kushina beside the leg. At the same time, some images once again appeared in Minato's mind, still with some red-haired imprints, but the scope was much smaller than before. Maybe we're about to catch up with them. Flying Thunder God technique. Minato pulled Shenyi's arm, and the two disappeared directly in place, and when they reappeared, they had already landed in front of a group of ninjas from Union Village. Seeing the two people who suddenly appeared, the ninja of Union Village stayed in place for a while, looking at Minato and Shenyi warily. At this time, Kushina had already woken up, looking at Shenya and Minato excitedly. The mark left by him was finally found to solve him. The few of you are sneaky, and I already knew that you would not simply come here to exchange friendship. It seems that at that time, it was not enough to teach you a lesson. You dared to take care of our affairs. Shenyi squinted his eyes. The 5 Union Village ninjas standing in front of him were so bullied by Mad Dai alone that they dared not fight back. They were able to shout so loudly at this moment. The 5 people looked at each other and already had some plans in mind. 4 people were left to face Shenyi and Minato, and one of them carried Kushina on his back and continued towards the village, as long as they could block it for a while. However, such a plan was seen through by Shenyi at a glance, and his body moved 2 steps to the side, blocking the route that everyone could leave. Look for an opportunity to save Jushinai, and just leave these 5 people to me. Shenyi twisted his neck. He hadn't exercised his muscles and bones for a long time, and finally he could let go of his hands and feet and do a big job. What's more, here is a long distance away from the village, so there is no need to worry about anyone interfering with this battle. Although I haven't really figured out the strength of these 5 people, maybe when they were in Muya village, what they showed was pretending to be pigs and eating tigers. Minato nodded in response. and threw several shurikens at the surrounding tree trunks one after another, each bearing the mark of the flying thunder god. In this way, you can move your body at any time, and you can save Kushina in any direction. Just because you two want to stop us. Isn't that a little too naive? Shen Yi shrugged indifferently. He didn't intend to stop these guys, but wanted to leave their lives in this forest. Strange power. Shen Yi didn't stop there, and a huge force from his feet pushed his body towards the crowd, ready to kill one at a lightning speed. But these guys have been vigilant all the time, and they reacted at the moment of Shen Yi's movements. Formation. The 5 people spread out in sequence, forming a 5-pointed star shape, resisting Shen Yi's attack. The powerful fist landed on the stomach of the leader, but it was completely useless, as if hitting a sponge. Shen Yi frowned. Although these 5 people don't seem to be very strong, they can fuse chakra together. Shen Yi, be careful, the strength of these guys has suddenly increased a lot. Shen Yi nodded. Maybe this is the legendary chakra fusion, although the power of one person is not to be feared, but releasing ninjutsu together has very powerful energy. But even so, Shen Yi still didn't take these things seriously, and it was only a matter of time before they were defeated. Once these 5 people are united, Minato will have enough time to rescue Kushina, so the mission of the 2 is considered complete. You are only one person, and the 5 of us together can play a role that completely surpasses yours. Even if you use chakra's consumption, you are not an opponent. Then the 5 of you have met your opponents, so let's compete for your chakra reserves. Shen Yi shook his wrist calmly, with disdain written all over his face. This was a great shame to the ninjas of Wuming Union Village, and they even sneered at the corners of their mouths, as if they had already seen the scene where Shen Yi fell. Lay done, let's go. The 5 people had the same mark on their hands, maintaining a completely unified movement. Jaeyin is so slow. If it is replaced by other opponents, the 5 of you will be dead, but I just have a good time with you. Shen Yi clasped his arms around his chest and quietly waited for the release of ninjutsu. There was a faint light of thunder on the bodies of those 5 guys, and then 5 palms directly slapped the ground, and countless thunder and lightning rushed towards Shen Yi along the ground. Completely different from the momentum just now, after the thunder and lightning hit the ground, the speed suddenly increased a lot, and it came to Shen Yi's feet in the blink of an eye. HMPH, Chakra Perception. Shen Yi stared and released the chakra perception to the maximum range, and the speed of the thunder and lightning suddenly dropped a lot in his sight. He took 2 steps back and easily avoided the lightning on the ground. The leader frowned. The ninjutsu that has always been proud of was easily resolved in such a short period of time, completely losing its aggressiveness. The technique of multiplying part of the strange power. Since these 5 people can play a huge role together, Shen Yi is going to separate these guys completely and break them one by one. The huge palm fell directly on one of the guys without warning, and he was easily grasped in the palm of the hand after pinching. At this moment, everyone was shocked in place. A guy who didn't even wear a forehead protector had such great power. The one caught in the palm of his hand couldn't break free with all his strength, and he couldn't help but feel disheartened. Boss, save me. My body can't move at all now, and I can't even breathe. Stop making noise. If you are killed by him, we won't be able to escape. The guy in the lead is deeply aware of the shortcomings of himself and his partners. Although they can play some roles together, if one person is missing, they cannot be formed. A person's strength is no different from that of ordinary ninjas, even worse than ordinary ninjas with better talent. The reason for forming a 5-member team is that everyone has found common ground and is worried that there will be no place for themselves in the future ninja world. Do you still want to save people? You should care about your own safety in the future. Minato had sent Kushina to a safe place at this time, and returned here to help Shen Yi fight together, but saw such a scene. While sighing, Minato instantly locked his target on the leader. After passing through the crowd several times in a row, the water gate landed directly on the guy's back, holding the shuriken tightly against his neck. One more sound, and I'll kill you. This guy swallowed his saliva and didn't dare to make a sound, for fear that Minato would send him away with a slight movement of his shuriken. Your leader has been controlled by me, I hope you can be a little self-aware. Shen Yi shook his head helplessly. It seemed that his fun was over, so he let go of his hand and put the thing in his palm on the ground. Say, what is the purpose of you bringing Jushina? If you can't give me a satisfactory answer, then you go to die. I said, we have taken a fancy to the blood of the Uzumaki family early on, so we took Jushina away to do some research on her, so that we can have it too. Minato snorted coldly, and slid the shuriken in his hand directly. The sharp blade directly cut the guy's throat, and the blood flowed down the body. Shenyi sighed softly. Sure enough, his beloved was in danger, no one would be calm. One of the 5 people had already been dealt with, and the other 4 together were not as powerful as Minato, and they were undoubtedly massacred crazily. Looking at his blood-stained hands, Minato was in a trance, and couldn't believe that he had done these things. A few steps forward, Shenyi patted Minato on the shoulder. He could understand Minato's mood at this time. The first time he really felt the feeling of killing in this world was when he confronted that guy from Onbi. At that time, he also had some doubts that he would kill himself. It's been resolved, and I'm going home with Jushinai. Minato nodded dumbly, and Liu Shinwuju walked behind Shenye, but Shenye did not immediately bring him to Kushina's side. Following the route in his memory, Shenye took Minato to the edge of a small stream, preparing to wash off the blood on his body before going to look for Kushina. Minato took a deep breath and jumped into the creek, holding back under the water for a few minutes before resurfacing. It's almost time for us to go back. Is this the ninja world? Can a world without killing be considered complete? Shenyi did not answer Minato's message, but handed Minato a brand new dress, turned around and rushed towards the direction where Kushina was avoiding. Before dark, the 3 of them returned to the village. Kushina stood at the door of the house and looked at Shenye and Minato gratefully. Thank you this time, otherwise I might be dead by now. In fact, it's all thanks to Minato. I carefully discovered that the hair you left behind is also Minato. I must thank Minato. Kamiya blinked at Kushina and Minato, turned around and left. Minato scratched his head, feeling a little overwhelmed, unable to understand why Shenye suddenly took all the credit for himself. While walking in Shenye's mind, he thought, this kid, Minato, must seize the opportunity well, otherwise I will waste my time creating opportunities for you. As the night gradually darkened, Shenye did not choose to go back to his home directly, but walked towards Hokage's office. He didn't believe that the 3rd generation didn't know about this matter. If it wasn't for the acquiescence of the 3rd generation, it would be even more difficult for the 5 of them to sneak into the village easily. Gently pushing open the door of the room, the 3rd generation seemed to have predicted the appearance of Shenyi, sitting at the table and watching quietly. Did the adults of the 3rd generation expect me to appear early in the morning, so they haven't rested yet at this late hour? Of course, I have seen the performance of you and Minato, and I am very satisfied. Shenyi frowned. Did he get tricked by this old guy again this time? Everything happened under his nose. So it's something you acquiesced in robbing Kushina. You even let people outside the village do whatever they want, and deserve the name 3 Hokage. Isn't the final result good? So what if you make some small sacrifices for the sake of the village? Shenyi, I am very optimistic about you. I don't need you to look after me. After leaving a word, Shenyi turned around and left. Although he had thought that this would be the case, but Hiruzuru Sarutobi's frank admission made Shenyi very upset, and he seemed to be a tool man again. But I am still a child, and I don't have the capital to argue with the 3 generations. In the future, we must give the entire ninja world fairness, no matter who it is. This situation is not allowed to happen. Shenyi, where are you going so late? Of course I went home to sleep. Who would hang around outside in the middle of the night? Shenyi didn't raise his head to observe the person who greeted him at all. He just waved his hand casually and said something perfunctory before preparing to move on. But that figure directly blocked Shenyi, not going to let him pass. In desperation, Shenyi had no choice but to stop to see who was so annoying and dared to block his way forward. Slowly raised his head, a familiar figure appeared in Kamiya's line of sight. It turned out to be Uchiha Makoto standing in front of him with his hands on his waist. Even so, the expression on Shenyi's face remained unchanged, and his appearance was extremely frightening. But Uchiha Makoto didn't feel anything at all, and still looked at Kamiya. Shenyi, why do you have such an expression? Did someone provoke you again? I'm going to teach that guy a lesson now. Quote. While speaking, Uchiha Makoto shook her fist, as if she had moved for real. Shenyi sighed helplessly, and swayed in front of him when he was upset. If it was someone else, he would have greeted him with fists. But Mikan is still a girl no matter what. Shenye still has to show her gentlemanly demeanor and be patient with her. Chi-Chi, why are you still wandering on the road if you don't go home so late? Is this direction going to Hokage's office? Mikan shook her head. Her arrogant face suddenly became shy, and she lowered her head slowly. It's because I saw you coming this way before, so I'll try my luck to see if I can meet you. So what if you meet me? I want you to take me home. Shenyi twitched the corners of his mouth twice. No matter what, he never expected such a thing. Shaking his head helplessly, Kamiya pulled Makoto's shoulders and walked towards the Uchiha family, ready to send this guy back. There were no pedestrians to be seen on the road, only Shenye and Makoto, but there were still eyes watching them all the time. In the darkness, a guy sneaked behind Shenyi. Shenyi had already discovered the existence of this guy but kept silent. Through the perception of chakra, Kamiya has already determined that this guy is Uchiha Fugaku's henchman, and he is also sneakily observing Kamiya at the Ninja Academy. There were not too many words along the way, and they parted at Makin's house in a short while. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. Matt Dai has been busy being promoted to genin, and Shenyi hasn't seen him for a few days. On this day, Shenyi came to the Ninja Academy early to occupy the position he wanted as usual, and at the same time reserved several positions around him. Matt Dai appeared in front of Shenyi wearing a green combat uniform, pointing to the forehead guard on his forehead with his head held high. Shenyi, I am now an official ninja, and I can accept some tasks by myself from today on. So today, can we leave this boring classroom and help you complete the mission together? The words were pointed out by Shenyi, and Matt Dai scratched his head in embarrassment. There was indeed a commission just accepted that needed Shenyi's help. It just so happened that she hadn't left this classroom for a while, and Shenyi couldn't wait to leave the village to exercise. This time call Minato, let's set off together. He's already waiting for us at the entrance of the village. I met him last night and explained the whole thing to him. Shenyi nodded and left his position and walked towards the entrance of the village. Minato was yawning and leaning against the stone pillar at the entrance of the village, shaking his body as if he could fall asleep at any time. Start work, cheer up a little bit. The two of you are still very fast, so let's go straight away. I can't help but want to make a move. Shenyi shook his head helplessly. It seems that after what happened last time, Minato also fell into the same problem, and couldn't help but want to find someone to start a fight. Having had actual combat experience, looking back at the theoretical knowledge of Ninja Academy to realize how naive it is not worth mentioning at all. Matt Dai led the way ahead, and Minato and Shenye followed quietly behind. What is the specific content of this mission? Where will we go this time? It's Yuyin Village. It is said that a huge water monster appeared there and no one can solve it, so I entrusted it to Muya Village to help calm it down. Shenyi rubbed his chin. Yuyin Village is not a village without ninjas, even the quality of ninjas is very high, almost every ninja is proficient in assassination. If they couldn't solve the water monster, how could they think that the ninjas in Muya Village would succeed? Besides, Matt Dai is just a child who has just been promoted to genin. Even if he entrusts him with help, he must come with that kind of strength. A series of questions appeared in Shenyi's mind, but since he had already walked out of the village, he had to see what a powerful water monster it was. After traveling for a while, several people finally arrived outside Yuyin Village. Looking at the clear sky outside, but walking into the village is a completely different situation. It's really magical here. It is said that it is caused by a kind of ninjutsu, so there is such a strange scene. Okay, go straight in and don't waste time here. Looking at each other, the three of them walked directly into the village. The humid environment made Shenye feel very uncomfortable. The rainy weather is really hard to like, and Shenye couldn't help but not appear in this village when he crossed over. Seeing the three people from Muya Village appear, an old man staggered towards the three of Shenye and stopped in front of Maidadai. The three are ninjas from Konoha Village. That's right, without further ado, take us to see what the water monster looks like. Let me introduce myself. I am the person sent by this village to meet you, and I will be by your side until the matter is over. Shenyi nodded and looked up and down at the weak-looking old man in front of him, only to find that he was not as weak as he appeared on the surface. In Chakra's perception again, This old guy contains very powerful energy in his body, and if it explodes, he may not be an opponent. Grandpa, I am very curious about one thing. Although Yuyan village is not as big as Muya village, it is not a place that lacks ninjas. If you can't solve it, why do you think Muya village can? To be honest, it's not that our strength doesn't allow it, but the tradition handed down from the village doesn't let us get close to that water. There is such a thing. The old man nodded and told the complete story. Listening to the legends of Yuyan village, Shenye couldn't help curling his lips, and only in the village led by Sanjiao Hanzo would he insist on believing in nonsense legends. There is no difference between the ninjas in Yuyan village and the ninjas in other villages, but they cannot freely enter and exit the waters like other people. You just need to tell us the approximate location of the water area, and I won't make it difficult for you to go there yourself. The old man looked at Shenyi gratefully. In fact, he had already made up his mind to die this time, but he didn't expect the little guy in Muya village to be so enlightened. He took out a scroll from behind and handed it to Shenyi. The old man nodded slightly, turned around and left. These guys just handed over the whole task to us. Aren't they afraid that we are road idiots? Shenyi shook his head slightly while laying the scroll on the ground, and saw that several places had been marked with red marks. It seems that it has been planned for a long time. These imprints were not marked on the same day. The grade of the scroll may be older than you and me. Minato nodded, looked up at the surrounding environment to confirm his location, and then drew a few times on the map with his shuriken. It's here, let's go now. Shenyi put away the scroll and walked to the depths of the village. If he wanted to reach that piece of water, he would have to travel across the entire village. There is some resistance to this water gate, not only to be drenched in the endless rain from the sky, but also the eyes of the villagers on the street keep casting him, which makes him very uncomfortable. Although the journey is very short, it seems that centuries have passed in Minato's heart. After experiencing the pressure in his heart, Minato finally arrived at the place known as the legendary waters under the leadership of Shenyi. But looking at the calm surface of the lake, no water monsters can be seen at all. No matter how you look at it, it doesn't look like there is a water monster here. That's not the case. Shenyi, look over there. Mate Dai pointed towards the lake in the distance. There was something floating in the sky above the water, looking at this side from afar through the distant air. Shenyi squinted his eyes and still couldn't see what it was. A white mist gradually appeared on the surface of the water. The technique of multiplying part of the strange power. Shenyi snorted coldly and directly made his hand huge, swirling it back and forth on the lake with a huge force, blowing away the mist in a short while. The scene in front of him gradually became real. Standing in the center of the lake was a statue, a lifelike dragon. But its eyes are very agile, as if it will break through the shackles and fly out at any time, turning the world upside down. It's really a huge monster. Could it be that the water monster that the villagers have always thought of as him? If this is the case, then the task is too easy to complete, and now you can go back to the village to receive the task reward. Shenyi shrugged, turned around and looked at Mad Dai, curious about what the mission reward was this time. It didn't look like ordinary gold coins. Sensing Shenyi's gaze, Mad Dai scratched his head in embarrassment, took out a scroll from his pocket and handed it to Shenyi. There is a big fire character written on the scroll, and it can be seen that it is a scroll from Muya village. With such a shape, Shenyi knew that it was the specific content and rewards of this mission, and everything about the mission was written on this scroll. Mission reward: a high-level physical skill scroll. Shenyi nodded thoughtfully. No wonder Mad Dai was so anxious, because he wanted to be more diligent in his practice. Taking advantage of this mission, let me teach you a brand new ninjutsu. It will definitely make you fall in love with it instantly, but use it carefully, understand? Mad Dai nodded again and again. It had been a long time since he had seen such a serious expression on Shenyi, and he knew the seriousness of this matter in his heart. Don't worry, Shenyi, as long as it is what you say, I will listen carefully. Feel the flow of chakra in your body carefully, and observe my chakra at the same time. Mad Dai acted bit by bit according to Shenyi's words. His eyes were fixed on Shenyi's body, for fear of missing something. 8 doors Dunjia art, open. Shenyi used the flow of chakra to stimulate the acupoints all over his body, washing acupoints one by one. With the stimulation of the acupuncture points, a faint chakra coat gradually appeared on the surface of Shenyi's body. Even an ordinary person standing here can feel that Shenye is gradually becoming stronger. Maedai naturally felt the changes in Shenye more clearly, and his eyes could not help but glow brightly. Minato saw how chakra works and knew that this ninjutsu was not suitable for him. Without the support of a strong body, performing the 8-gate Dunjia would only make him collapse at any time. After demonstrating the start and end of the 8-door escape technique, Shenyi withdrew his state. After all, with the current physical condition, you can barely do this. If you continue to use it, it will cause huge damage to your body, and the gain outweighs the loss. If I had known about such a magical skill, I wouldn't have dragged the two of you over to perform this task. Fulfilling the task is also a kind of experience. It will definitely not be that simple here. At least the current calm is only on the surface. Minato nodded, he felt the same way. The water monster may be synonymous with Yuyan village, but the real danger has not yet appeared. However, I have already come here, so it would be a bit too ordinary to go back like this, and I will not gain anything at all. Neither Shenye nor Minato had vented a bit, and the simmering energy in their hearts was still ready to move. I'm looking here, maybe I'll find something. Shenyi nodded, and walked along the shore in the opposite direction to the water gate, while Maedai was reviewing the practice that Shenyi taught him with relish. Time passed little by little, and some subtle changes took place in the surrounding environment, but no one noticed. The sky had gradually darkened, and Shenya's stomach started to growl, and it seemed that he hadn't eaten for a whole day. Grilled fish. Agree. Maedai, it's time to test you. Go to the bottom of the water and catch some fish. Maedai put all the things on his body on the shore, stretched his muscles and bones, and got into the water directly. The fish, which were still swimming slowly, rioted immediately after Maedai joined, and panically avoided the approach of Maedai. The water is not Maedai's world. He was played by several fishes, but he didn't catch a single fish for a long time. What did I teach you just now? Why don't you know how to use it? Maedai took a deep breath when he got out of the water, and sank to the bottom of the water again, thinking about what Shenyi had just said in his heart. In an instant, Maedai's movements in the water became extremely brisk, and his swimming speed was comparable to that of a small fish in the water. When he grabbed it, a big fish was in his hands. Swinging towards the shore, Shenyi nodded in satisfaction. Shuamin had found some firewood and put it in a pile on the bank to complete the grill. However, he couldn't use fire escape ninjutsu, so he could only use the most primitive method of drilling wood to make fire, rubbing two wooden sticks together. Shenyi shook his head helplessly and pushed Shenyi away. Art fire escape ho fireball. Precisely controlling his own chakra, he spit out a little flame from his mouth to ignite the pyre, and the flame rose slowly. After a while, the aroma of grilled fish wafted out. After catching several fish in a row, Maedai returned to the shore and prepared to feast. However, at this time, a strange voice appeared. It's been a long time since I smelled such a sweet smell. I wonder if I can share some of these grilled fish. Shenyi turned his head to look at the source of the voice. It was a middle-aged man with displeasure written all over his face. No one paid any attention to him, but he sat down next to Shenyi as if he was acquainted, and took out some seasonings from his pocket and sprinkled them on the grilled fish. Of course the grilled fish needs some seasonings to be delicious. No one here has been able to catch fish for a long time. Uncle, you are really welcome. Aren't you afraid that my fish is poisonous? It's you who are worried about my seasoning. I don't know how you little fellows appeared in this place. You are not the boys from Yuyan village. Shenyi nodded undeniably. With such an ancient abandoned legend, how dare the guys from Yuyan village come here? The uncle rolled his eyes, and seemed to understand that the reason why these teenagers came here was nothing more than to be entrusted to solve the strange things that happened recently. There are no water monsters here at all. I'm afraid you will have to make a trip in vain. Uncle, you know so much about this place. You are not a villager of Yuyan village. The uncle was stunned. He hadn't heard anyone ask such a question for many years, and he had forgotten what the answer to the question was. Seeing that this guy didn't answer his question, Shenyi shook his head helplessly, and handed the cooked fish to the uncle. In fact, the moment the sound appeared, Shenyi released the chakra perception to the maximum range, and it can be determined that this uncle is not aggressive at all. Even if he was a very strong person, he didn't show any aggression. He was easygoing and gentle. The uncle unceremoniously took the grilled fish and ate it. It looked very ugly, as if he hadn't eaten anything for hundreds of years. Time passed bit by bit, and both Shenyi and the strange uncle finally patted their stomachs in satisfaction. After eating your fish, let me tell you some stories here, maybe it will help you. Shenyi raised his head and looked at the uncle. Compared with the villagers of Yuyan village, the words of this uncle are obviously more credible at this time. After all, he has been living here all the time. Minato and Mad Dai also pricked up their ears to listen, for fear of falling behind. A long time ago, this was just an ordinary pond. The villagers of Yuyan village would still appear here to fish, but everything changed after that guy was born. That guy, that's right, it's Sanshoyu Hanzo. His appearance broke the original appearance of Yuyan village. Shenyi touched his chin. That guy has been guarding Yuyan village and has not invaded the surroundings. However, he has also experienced countless battles, and won all without exception. Minato didn't understand the connection between the appearance of Sanshoyu Hanzo and the fact that this place was listed as a forbidden area. That fellow Sanshoyu Hanzo has a deadly poisonous gas on his body, so he can't get close to this place, so he ordered the entire village not to appear here. It's really overbearing. Of course, these are just prerequisites. The time of the water monster that appeared recently is inextricably linked to the Sanshoyu Hanzo, and it is his psychic beast. Just as several people were talking, the calm lake surface suddenly changed dramatically. The uncle sighed softly, propping himself up on the ground with one hand, and slowly got up, turned around and walked in the direction he came from, as if he didn't want to participate in it. Shenyi didn't force him to stay, nodded towards Minato and Mad Dai, turned around and jumped up. Even though the turmoil is raging, it is still not seen what is the source of the turmoil. How could Hanzo's psychic beast be on this water? I think that uncle is lying. Never mind him, kill him no matter what. Minato had already assumed a fighting stance, staring intently at the lake, and Mad Dai also remained vigilant at all times. The waist and the horse are one, we may fight on the water next, and if we are not careful, we will fall into the water. These are all pediatrics in Ninja Academy, so there is no need to worry about us. The three of them jumped onto the water together. It was difficult to stand quietly on the swaying water, and their bodies kept shaking with the waves. After a while, the water calmed down again. Shenyi couldn't help frowning. What happened? Over there. Minato raised his finger and pointed to the lake in the distance, and a huge shadow under the water flashed past. Shenyi quickly ran over there, ready to see what was going on, but he didn't expect that guy had disappeared after he passed. In just a few minutes, it was as if nothing had happened. At this moment, Shenyi couldn't help wondering if it was the uncle who did it, and what he said just now was completely deceiving everyone. The real cause of the water monster phenomenon was that guy. At that time, he came over to eat grilled fish just to test his attitude. We fell for it and I know where to go to fix it. Shenyi quickly returned to the shore, followed the direction where the uncle disappeared. Minato and Mad Dai looked at each other and followed. After passing through layers of forest, Shenyi finally saw a hut in the forest, which was exactly what Shenyi was familiar with. With the release of chakra perception, he can clearly perceive that the guy in the hut at the moment is the uncle who just appeared suddenly, but he still has no aggressiveness. Rush in. With Shenyi's order, the three of them leapt directly around the hut and surrounded all the windows and doors. Almost at the same time, the three of them made a movement and rushed directly into the room along the window and door. The uncle was leaning leisurely on the chair. There was a smile on his face, as if he didn't notice the appearance of Shenyi and the others. The uncle was still enjoying himself. Seeing this, Shenyi raised his hand, then took the chair not far away and sat opposite the uncle, looking at each other. Minato and Mad Dai shrugged helplessly. They were serious just now, but they suddenly relaxed and felt uncomfortable. Uncle, why did you lie to me? I wanted you to retreat in spite of the difficulties. I don't want to hurt you children. Sanjiao Hanzo just want to scare me away. Some people look down on the hearts of our Muya village ninjas too much. If that's the case, let's let you feel what the real horror is, so that you can stay here after you die. Shenyi shrugged indifferently, turned around and walked out of the room. No matter what, there was no way to fight in the room. In just a few breaths, all four people in the room appeared on a clearing in the forest. Art Fire Escape Ho Fireball. Without any hesitation, Shen Yi took the lead in launching the attack, condensing chakra and spitting out a huge ball of flames towards the uncle from his mouth. Even the powerful fireball technique used by the so-called genius ninja Uchiha Fugaku is not as good as 1/10 of what Kamiya used at this time, which is enough to see how powerful this attack is. However, the uncle was unmoved. Until the flames surrounded him, he still had his arms around his chest. Time passed little by little, and the flame gradually dissipated. I couldn't see what method the uncle used, but found that this guy didn't have any damage at all, and there wasn't even a trace left on him. Now you know the gap between you and me, it's a gap that can't be bridged at all. Shen Yi curled her lips. The chakra perception had been on all the time, and just now she could clearly see that the chakra in the uncle's body was running rapidly. Although his expression looked calm, his body was under tremendous pressure, and the dots of sweat on his forehead had already betrayed him. It's not as simple as it seems. Shen Yi smiled and took 2 steps back. The uncle frowned and felt that he was vaguely calculated, but he didn't find anything wrong. After a blink of an eye, Minato and Mad Dai appeared on the left and right of the uncle at the same time, and 2 huge fists hit the uncle's face fiercely. At this moment, the uncle could no longer continue to be calm, so he quickly withdrew his body to avoid being hit by his fist. After barely dodging the attack, the uncle finally understood that the 3 little guys in front of him were not easy to mess with, and if he was a little careless, he would stay here forever. Water escape, the technique of water bullets. The uncle quickly made seals with his hands, condensed the chakra in his mouth, and spat in the direction of Shen Yi. He knew that the leader of these people was Shen Yi. If Shen Yi could be killed in one fell swoop, the next battle would be much easier. However, Shen Yi's strength is not just lip service. Even if he fights alone, he still has the possibility to solve the uncle, not to mention the cooperation of Minato and Mad Dai by his side. The water column came in front of Shen Yi in an instant, and the corners of Shen Yi's mouth slightly raised. He is not an uncle. He will not choose to resist the attack abruptly, and forcefully pretend to be in front of the enemy. Partial doubling technique. Shen Yi magnified his arm in front of his body, and the strong impact instantly fell on the arm, pushing Shen Yi back a long distance. After stabilizing his body, Shen Yi shook his arm. Although there was no damage left, the pain really existed. Taking advantage of the time when the uncle attacked Shen Yi, Mad Dai ran to the uncle's side in 2 or 3 steps, and had a physical confrontation with him with fists and feet. The uncle is not Mad Dai's opponent at all, and he loses the wind in 2 or 3 hits. If he continues, he will be easily subdued by Mad Dai. Water escape, water cage. He kicked Mad Dai fiercely, and at the same time, quickly formed a seal with his hands, forming a light blue light in his palm and pushing towards Mad Dai. Mad Dai, who didn't know ninjutsu, directly raised his palm and stuck it up. The light blue light expanded instantly, forming a huge water polo that imprisoned Mad Dai inside and couldn't move, even using all the strength in his body still couldn't do it. Minato frowned. Such advanced ninjutsu is definitely not something that a junior ninjutsu can use, at least it has reached the level of a junior ninja. Shen Yi, this time is a bit tricky. His strength far surpasses ours. Look for an opportunity to save Mad Dai. Minato nodded, distanced himself from the uncle, and was ready to appear next to the water polo that imprisoned Mad at any time, and Yu Shenye was in front of him to attract the uncle's attention. Strange power. A huge force appeared under Shen Yi's feet, and his whole body rushed out like a bullet, and he came in front of the uncle in an instant. Raised his fist and bombarded the uncle's stomach. If this hit really hit, I believe that the uncle would completely lose his fighting ability in a short time. The uncle squinted his eyes, and could feel the power contained in the fist. Water escape. Water avoids obstacles. The uncle clasped his palms together and quickly spread them apart. A water curtain appeared in front of the uncle. Shen Yi's fist finally hit the water curtain and a huge splash appeared. However, the uncle took this opportunity to avoid the impact of the strange force, and twisted his neck to prepare for a timely counterattack. Hey, what's the matter with you guys bullying a few children here? Don't you feel ashamed of such a grown-up person? A familiar voice appeared behind Shen Yi. Shen Yi didn't need to turn around to know that it was Jiraiya, that cheap guy, but he didn't know why he appeared here. The uncle tilted his head and looked away from Shen Yi to look at the source of the sound, and found that it was a guy with a huge scroll on his back standing on a tree trunk and looking down. Through the forehead guard on the forehead, it is impossible to tell which village this guy is a ninja from, only a big oily word. I said, Brother Zaraya, why did you show up at this time? The village made some mistakes in judging this mission. Fortunately, you are not in any danger. Otherwise, the 3 generations of adults will definitely feel guilty for the rest of their lives. It's a good thing you showed up in time, otherwise I've already dealt with this guy. Shen Yi ignored Zilai. Fortunately, he was by his side to perform the task this time, otherwise, with the strength of ordinary ninjas in the village, it would not be enough for the uncle to grit his teeth. Ji Lai also shrugged helplessly, and rushed over here as soon as he got the news, for fear that something might go wrong later. But at this time, it seems that everything is still in time. Except for Mad Dai, who seemed to be in a panic, no one was injured. Brother Zaraya, I leave this place to you. I will take the 2 of them back to the village to receive the reward. Work hard. Zilai also nodded, and when he left the village, the 3rd generation had told himself to let them go back to the village directly after seeing Matadai and his party. No matter how the task is completed, the task reward this time will eventually fall into the hands of Mad Dai. After leaving the pond in Yuyan village, a few people returned to the village in just half a day. The 3rd Hokage stood at the entrance of the village and waited anxiously. After seeing Shenye and the others clearly, the expression on Sandai's face instantly relaxed. Shenye sighed. Let's go, 3 generations are already waiting for us. The 3 responded by speeding up their pace, and after a while they stayed beside the 3rd generation. 3 generations of adults are waiting for us here. I'm worried about your safety. Fortunately, I found out the problem in time. Otherwise, Muya village will suffer huge losses. The fall of the 3 genius ninjas. Shen Yi couldn't help but cast a blank look at the 3rd generation. Why did he think that he would fall into the hands of that uncle, and didn't believe in his own strength? And listening to the 3rd generation's tone, they don't really care about the death of themselves and their partners. They only care about the interests of the village, and death is a loss to the village. The goodwill that had just been established disappeared in an instant. Shen Yi waved his hand lightly and left. Sandai shook his head helplessly and handed the scroll to Mad Dai, then walked towards the office, leaving Minato and Mad Dai stunned. I have obtained more advanced ninjutsu. You must practice hard. Next time we meet, I will try to see if your strength will improve. Then try it out. After all, the 2 also parted ways. After returning home, Shen Yi simply ate something and lay down on his bed, thinking about the uncle in Yuyan village. A person with that kind of strength would be a very powerful existence even in the village, but he has been living in a hut in the woods, and it seems that he has not left for a long time. After thinking about it, Shenye fell asleep, and when he woke up, he looked out the window and it was already late at night. But in the dead of night, there were rustling voices outside the door. Shenye curiously got up and approached the door to listen carefully. This matter must not be done by Shenye. Why do so many ninjas in the village focus on Shenye? Only his identity is suitable for this task. Although it will take a long time, he will also grow in experience. Why are you so resistant? He's my brother. Don't you know I've lost a brother? As he spoke, Tsunade burst into tears, and the door fell silent for an instant. Only Tsunade's crying could be heard. Shenya frowned and directly pushed open the door and walked out. Tsunade and the guy who was talking to him looked at Shenyi in surprise, thinking that he was performing a mission outside and did not come back. The guy who was arguing with Tsunade was a member from Onbi, with a mask on his face. Tell me what's going on, otherwise you don't want to leave so easily. Shenyi sat on the side domineeringly, his eyes full of death fell firmly on the members of Anbu. I don't know why, after this guy met Shenyi's eyes, he felt a chilling feeling, and he wanted to shrink back vaguely. It's like this, Master Danzo issued an order to let you go to a hostile village to act as a spy. No one will know that you are a ninja from Konoha village. It's better for me to recommend a candidate for you, who is more suitable than me, so you can go back and make business. The painted-faced man nodded again and again, completely unaware that Shenyi was not only not angry, but instead found a more suitable candidate for him to work on, so that he would not be criticized by Danzo when he went back. Tsunade wiped the tears from the corners of his eyes. Since this matter has been known by Shenyi, there is no need to worry about the following matters. If Shenyi really wanted to leave Konoha village, Tsunade couldn't stop him at all, and if he didn't want to leave the village, he didn't need to participate in it himself. At the same time, Tsunade was also very curious, who would Kamiya recommend to Anbu's plan? Choose a random person from your Anbu who can play the role of this spy, and has been successfully brainwashed by your Danzo-sama, and will never do anything to betray the village. The painted-faced man was speechless for a while, and he couldn't find any words to refute. Now it seems that it is very risky for Shenye to take on the role of this spy. He is very likely to choose to betray Muya village after seeing the beauty of other villages. After all, Shenyi itself did not really come from Muya village, but was popularized by the head of Muya village. I'm going back to my life. The painted-faced man nodded, turned around and left without having much communication with Shenyi. Sister Tsunade, if these guys come to bother you again in the future, I will definitely drive them away. Today is a lesson for them. Tsunade smiled and hugged Shenya into his arms, without saying anything, just hugging quietly like this. Shenyi patted Tsunade's back without any resistance, and slowly felt the softness of Tsunade's body. Time passed little by little, and the two of them hugged like this all night, and at some point Shenya found out that Tsunade had fallen asleep. But worried about waking Tsunade up, Shenye didn't make any moves. Early the next morning, Tsunade slowly opened his eyes, and found that he had fallen asleep under such circumstances, and his face blushed slightly. You finally woke up, Tsunade-san. I was exhausted from the night. Letting go of Tsunade's shoulders, Kamiya quickly twisted his body a few times. Like a rusty machine, there was a clicking sound coming from the body, and at the same time, Shenyi felt comfortable. Shenyi, don't you have nothing to do today? How about the two of us go out and have fun? It's been a long time since I've relaxed. Shenyi grinned, not wanting to reveal that Tsunade made such an opinion because his hands were itchy and he wanted to gamble. Going out with this guy who is sure to lose every bet, Shenyi was very worried that he would be left as a mortgage in an unknown place, but for Tsunade's happiness, he agreed. In order to prepare to go out, Tsunade searched the room inside and out, and put all the things he could bring into his luggage, but all of this would become a burden on Kamiya. After leaving the village, Tsunade took Shenyi in and out of various private casinos. In just half a day, Tsunade had already lost all the gold coins he was carrying, leaving only some gold coins in Shenya's pocket that were enough to eat. But looking at Tsunade's unfinished look, Shenya was faintly worried. Sister Tsunade, all the gold coins we brought have been lost, so we can't continue to gamble. Tsunade shrugged helplessly, expressing that his interest had just come up. Since he had no gold coins in his hand, he should borrow some outside. Shenyi couldn't help but cast a blank glance at Tsunade. How could he bring himself out to play? After passing a small village, Tsunade stopped. I am very familiar with the casino owners here, and I can definitely borrow some money here. Tsunade strode towards the only casino in the village. Before seeing Tsunade, he could feel the momentum of walking towards the casino. This big fat sheep is finally here. It's been a long time since I saw her come to warm our casino. The casino owner immediately put down all the work in his hands and appeared at the door, welcoming Tsunade with great fanfare. Boss, you are so polite, you actually came out to greet me in person. Where is there, Tsunade, you can be our big customer here, how can there be any reason not to welcome you? Shenyi could tell from the eyes of these people that Tsunade was already regarded as a fat sheep. No matter how much money he had, he would keep it. Fortunately, all the gold coins have been lost before coming here, as long as the boss here does not lend the gold coins to Tsunade. I'm unlucky today. I lost all my gold coins on the way here, so boss, please lend me some and let me make money here. The boss swallowed, and kept rubbing his fists, as if he had seen a lot of gold coins fall into his pocket. Shenyi couldn't help but stepped forward to remind the boss a few words. She wants to borrow money, if she loses. The name of Tsunade-sama is very famous in the whole ninja world, and the casino will definitely lose a penny. I am still very confident in this. Shenyi twitched the corners of her mouth a few times. She really had nothing to do with such a natural gambler, she had no choice but to pray for her luck. For the gambling here, Shenyi has no interest at all. Sister Tsunade, I'll take a walk around the village, you can have fun here. Tsunade, whose mind was occupied by his interest in gambling, completely ignored Kamiya's words, and waved his hand in a perfunctory manner as a promise. Then he followed the boss into the casino and started a happy and fulfilling life. Shenyi put the package on his body in the casino, and wandered around the village alone. Did he stop to observe the beautiful scenery? Although the village doesn't look very big, it will take a long time to fully appreciate it. If it is not impossible to return to my own world in the future, it is also a good choice to retire in such a beautiful place. My own world. Do handsome kids have their own world? A guy wearing a cloth black robe and holding a little fragrant pig walked up to Kamiya's side. He seemed to be about the same age as Tsunade. But compared to Tsunade, the girl standing next to Shenyi lacked a lot of softness. Looking at the face of the girl beside her, Shenyi felt a familiar feeling, so he hurriedly took a few steps forward and turned around to observe carefully. Mute, do you know me? Muting pointed to his nose differently. Before that, he had never seen this child at all, but just watched his fair face come here to tease him. Shenyi stroked his chin and pondered for a moment. It was not surprising that Shizune didn't know him, but he didn't know if he would know Tsunade. I'll take you to meet someone and you'll know. Shenyi involuntarily took Jing Yin's hand and walked towards the casino. Looking at the direction the two were heading, Jing Yin had already guessed something in his heart. Until he stopped at the entrance of the casino and listened to the noisy voices inside, Jing Yin could finally confirm that it was her. Shenyi frowned and rushed directly into the casino, worried that Tsunade would be bullied by the guys here. However, it was obvious that Shenyi was overthinking. The noisy sound was just the sound of intense gambling, and Tsunade rolled up his sleeves and was fighting with others with great fanfare. Looking at the gold coins in front of her, Shenyi knew that during the time he was away, Tsunade had never won once. Master Tsunade, haven't you already promised me that you won't appear in this casino again? Shizune looked at Tsunade in surprise, his eyes full of disappointment. Shenyi instantly had an expression of watching the excitement. It seems that Shizune and Tsunade not only knew each other before, but even had this agreement before the two of them. However, Tsunade did not abide by the gambling agreement, and would pay due punishment for his gambling addiction. However, Tsunade was too selfless, completely ignored Shizune and Kamiya, and continued to gamble on his own. Give me some peace, all of you. Shenyi's small body instantly jumped onto the table and yelled twice. The room fell silent instantly, and everyone's eyes were fixed on Shenyi. Tsunade's expression was very displeased. He raised his head and was about to get angry, but found that it was the boy Shenya standing on it. Don't make trouble, you brat, my sister will end soon. Let's see who is standing at the door. Compared with me, I'm afraid you don't want to see her now. Shenya pointed in the direction of the door, and Tsunade looked in the direction of Shenya's finger, and suddenly froze in place. In any case, she didn't expect to see Shizune here, and for a moment Tsunade wanted to find a crack in the ground to get in, and she didn't want to face Shizune at all. Long time no see, Tsunade-sama. Jing Yin greeted her with a smile on her face, but anyone could see that there was a conspiracy behind the smile. Long time no see Shizune, I really didn't expect you to be here. After we parted last time, I was worried that you would come back here to gamble, so I stayed here. I didn't expect to have a chance to meet. Tsunade waved at the people in the casino again and again, and pulled Shenyi and Jingyin to the outside, not even taking the gold coins discarded on the table. Following Shizune, Kamiya and Tsunade came to her residence here. The small house surrounded by flowers and plants is very elegant no matter how you look at it, completely in line with the quiet temperament. By the way, Sister Shizune, since Sister Tsunade has promised you that you will not gamble here, did something happen before? Tsunade quickly shook his head and blinked vigorously at Shizune, not wanting Shizune to tell the story of the past. However, Tsunade has already broken the promise of the two people. Shizune will naturally not continue to hide this matter. After all, this is the real agreement between the two people. Shizune keeps the secret for Tsunade, and Tsunade can never step into this village to gamble. A few years ago, when Tsunade-sama and I were traveling in the ninja world together, she was already a well-known gambler, but I didn't expect to be cheated here. So Sister Tsunade attacked ordinary people in a fit of anger, and no one except you knew about it, and the guys who were beaten didn't dare to say anything. Jing Yin looked at Shenyi differently. Unexpectedly he had already guessed everything, and there was no need to tell the whole story by himself. Tsunade lowered his head and didn't dare to say a word. It is not allowed to do it to ordinary people no matter which village it is in. In the future, Tsunade felt very guilty towards those people, prepared a lot of gold coins and ordered Shizune to send them over, and asked Shizune to travel outside for a period of time. Sister Shizune, from today on, you should continue to follow Sister Tsunade, otherwise she will just gamble endlessly. Shizune raised her head and looked at Tsunade. In fact, she wanted to be by Tsunade's side. After all, her medical ninjutsu was immature at this time and she needed to learn it. On the other hand, Tsunade is the only relative I have left in this world, and only by Tsunade's side can I feel a little bit of warmth. Most of the day has passed, and the appointment to play together has turned into a gambling trip by Tsunade alone. At this time, Shenye regretted being deceived by Tsunade's appearance in the morning, otherwise, she might have been sitting in front of Yule Ramen and happily waiting for ramen. Come back, your heart has been trained, and you will learn medical ninjutsu by my side. Jing Yin nodded again and again, and finally looked forward to the day when she would return, but she didn't expect to meet in such a way. It's getting late, we should go back, Sister Tsunade. Shenyi looked at Tsunade with a helpless smile, and was regarded as a coolie for a day, and even almost lost all the gold coins in his pocket. Tsunade touched his chin, and looked at Shizune with an embarrassed face. Jing Yin shook her head helplessly. She had seen this expression a few years ago, and instantly understood what was going on. After searching the room for a while, Jing Yin took out a bag of gold coins. Shenyi stared at the gold coins in the bag with wide eyes. Even if Tsunade searched all the gold coins in the room that could be carried, there were not as many gold coins in this bag. Jing Yin, who looks soft and weak, unexpectedly is a rich woman. She knew that Shenyi would first cheat some gold coins into her own hands, and leave the rest to Tsunade to pay off the debt. Looking at Shenyi's eyes, Jing Yin shook her head helplessly. Since she was about to leave here anyway, it would be useless to keep the gold coins, so she took out another bag. I'll give you this bag, I don't need an envious look. Shenyi quickly took it into his hands, who would have trouble with money. After packing all their bags, the three of them set out on their way back to the village. It wasn't until they finally entered Muya village that Kamiya really understood one thing. Tsunade not only lost the gold coins he carried when he went out, he even owed debts in every casino. In every casino he visited along the way, Tsunade would take out some gold coins to repay the debts. In the end, he didn't even let Shenyi's pockets go, and returned to the village empty. Our practicing ninjas must understand one thing. Only their own strength is the most important thing. Gold coins are just things outside the body, so don't pay too much attention to them. Shenyi grinned. It was the first time he saw Tsunade's face. Such a big talker could even say so many fallacies for no reason. Suddenly a face unfamiliar to Konoha village appeared beside him, and Tsunade had to go to Hokage's office to confirm Shizune's identity immediately. However, Kamiya had already had enough of being with Tsunade, waved his hand and left alone for Ichiraku Ramen. Shenyi, I haven't seen you for 2 days, are you going to perform some missions again? Shanshiro Aoba leaned on the stone pillar next to the gate and looked at Shenyi, with a straw in his mouth. There is no task, if only I can relax like brother Shanchang. Shanshiro Aoba shook his head. Almost everyone would express their envy to such a comfortable task arrangement in front of themselves, but no one knew his inner thoughts. Although he is also realizing his own value here, but the gatekeeper does not know when he will be able to experience the war, and he will only make a difference when the village is attacked. Go and eat your ramen, and see how haggard you look. Shenyi scratched his head. There is no reason why he should not be haggard after being steamed by Tsunade for a whole day. But Shenyi suddenly changed his mind, and went home directly to sleep, actually not hungry. Following the familiar route, Shenyi walked to the door of the house in a short while, but found that the door was surrounded by many people, all of whom were villagers from the village. Everyone, what happened? Why are you all around my door? Shenyi, you finally showed up. I don't know what you and Tsunade are busy with. Something serious happened to your family. Everyone made way for Shenyi, but from the outside, there was still nothing unusual about it, and it was not clear what these guys were talking about. What's going on? I can't see what's going on in the house at all. Just open the door and you'll know. Shenyi frowned and gently pushed open the door, only to find that the inside of the room was in a mess as if it had been burglarized and the ground was full of mess. There are still people who dare to come to Sister Tsunade's house to steal things. Chapter 71. More and more people gathered around, and they couldn't believe that Tsunade's family recruited thieves. Throughout the entire Konoha village, no one dared to provoke Tsunade, let alone sneak into the house to cause damage. Shenyi frowned looking at the mess all over the room, and thought carefully about who could do such a thing. However, no results were found. Everyone is scattered, don't gather here. Shenyi beckoned to disperse the crowd, glanced at everyone, trying to find that guy through his eyes, but found that everyone was very innocent. At this time, Tsunade just walked into the office with Shizune, and he still doesn't know what happened in the house, otherwise he will be furious. 3 generations, Jingyin has been practicing outside for so long, and now she can continue to follow me. Sandai nodded his head and agreed, but his eyes were filled with a little helplessness, but he couldn't say anything to Tsunade. After leaving the office, Tsunade took Shizune to go back to his home, but found that Shenya was standing at the door and hesitated, not in the room for some reason. What's the matter, Shenyi, why aren't you in the room? Sister Tsunade, you may not believe it when you tell me, some major events have happened at home, it's better for you to see for yourself. Tsunade pushed open the door because he didn't understand, and when he found the situation inside the room, he was stunned for 2 seconds. What followed was a roar that could be heard throughout the village. Who did it? Shenyi swallowed his saliva, and he could vaguely see that Tsunade's head was on fire. It seemed that he was extremely angry. However, the people passing by seemed to have gotten used to Tsunade's state. They just turned their heads slightly and took a look, then ignored them and continued to busy themselves with their own affairs. Master Tsunade, I seem to know who did it, Shizune said in a soft voice, and was also worried that a disagreement would cause Tsunade's second rage, which he could not bear. Who? Looking at the traces left in the room, I think that Orochimaru is back. This guy gave you a meeting gift. Oshimaru, this nasty guy. Tsunade turned around angrily and walked towards the office. Kamiya blinked innocently and chose to follow behind Tsunade, fearing that he would do something out of the ordinary because of his anger. Jingyin shook his head helplessly, walked into the room and began to tidy up in an orderly manner. Without wasting too much time on the road, Tsunade and Kamiya quickly walked into the office one after the other, just in time for Orochimaru to stand in front of Sandai with a pale complexion. Oshimaru, you fool! Tsunade condensed a large amount of chakra on his fist, and beat towards Orochimaru fiercely. However, Orochimaru already knew Tsunade's attack well, and he avoided the attack by turning his body a few times in a row. At the same time, countless small snakes flew out from his cuffs to wrap around Tsunade's arm. In the blink of an eye, the battle between the two was over, and it ended with no winner. There was a smile on the face of the 3rd generation. Both Tsunade and Orochimaru were his former disciples, and Orochimaru was liked by Sarutobi Hiruzane. Now that Orochimaru can come back, there is no reason for the 3rd generation to be unhappy. 3 generations of adults. I believe that Dashiwan has been practicing outside for so long, and he is basically penniless, so you should bear the loss at home. There was a slight smile on the corner of Shenyi's mouth, taking this opportunity to make a big deal. The 3rd generation would never refuse his request, and even boasted. After a few breaths of silence, Sandai moved his lips slowly, as Shenyi thought. If there is anything you need, just ask the village, and all your requests will be met. Shenyi shrugged his shoulders. His goal had already been achieved, and there was no reason to continue to participate in the affairs of this room, so he simply went home and tidied up the room with Jingyin. But when he was leaving, Shenyi suddenly remembered that he hadn't used the system ability for a long time, and he could just test it on Dashiwan. Master Orochimaru, this is the first time I've seen you since I came to this village. The legendary Sannin are indeed very generous. While speaking, Shenyi walked towards Dashimaru. For Orochimaru, Kamiya is just a child who relies on the name of Sannin. Orochimaru is used to this, and there are countless children in the village who have longing for him. Tsunade and Jilai, and regard Sannin as their goal. This kid is the little brother you took in, Tsunade. It looks very suitable for cultivation. Do you want to practice with Oshimaru brother in the future? Forget it, Sister Tsunade will not hand me over to you. During the conversation, Shenyi had already come to Dashuan, and then raised his hand to pat Dashuan's body, silently activating the stealing ability of the system in his heart. Orochimaru looked at Shenyi differently. Could this be a child's curiosity to make such a move? Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully stealing the skill of Orochimaru, the snake-shaped shallow hand. Skill cooling time, 1 hour. Shenyi is still satisfied with this result. The snake-shaped shallow hand can not only attack but also has a strong control ability, which is suitable for Shenyi to use now. After the system upgrade, Shenyi used the ability to steal ninjutsu for the first time, and the cooling time was reduced to only 1 hour, which was quite unexpected. Sister Tsunade, I'm going back to help Sister Shizune clean up the room. After waving his hand, Shenyi left the office and returned home after a while. Jing Yin tidied up the room very quickly. At this time, the whole room has been completely refreshed, and there is no trace of being ransacked at all. Sister Jingyan, it seems that I can't help you much. Who said that if there is a bag of garbage here, I will hand it over to you? Shenyi nodded, picked up the garbage at the door and walked outside, but it took a long distance to do it. The sun was hanging high in the sky. Shenyi, how is the situation at home? I heard that there seems to be a thief in the house. Where did the thief come from? Tsunade's sister's good friend Orochimaru appeared and came back to play a prank. Minato scratched his head. He had heard a long time ago that the great god had defected from the village and became a rebel, but now he suddenly appeared. It seems that the information he received before was inaccurate. By the way, we won't go out for a while. Why did you say that all of a sudden? I have received accurate information. We are about to graduate soon, so it is better to stay in the village obediently. Shenyi nodded, and finally left this boring ninja academy to truly enter the ninja world, fighting in a contest between life and death. A few days passed in a blink of an eye, and the village ushered in a prosperous graduation ceremony. Many ninjas gathered at the ninja academy to participate in the ceremony. As the protagonist of the graduation, Shenyi and his party naturally attended, and there were countless classmates waiting for the reading of the third Hokage in the center of the practice field. Didn't you say before that you have to take the assessment of the shadow clone technique to successfully graduate, but now it seems that there is no need for that at all. The necessary candidates have all gathered here, and those who are not allowed to graduate can only watch enviously from the audience. Minato looked to both sides, and indeed there were many familiar figures standing beside many ninjas, with envious expressions on their faces. Even though these guys are taking classes in the same classroom as myself, it is still very painful to be postponed for 1 year to graduate. Under the auspices of the third Hokage, the graduation ceremony was proceeding in an orderly manner, but there was a pair of eyes in the crowd that kept staring at Kamiya. Uchiha Fugaku has long been disliked by Kamiya, and has been accumulating anger in his heart until the day when he graduates. Once Shenyi became a true ninja, Uchiha Fugaku would have every reason to fight him and take this opportunity to destroy him by mistake. From today onwards, you are a ninja of Muya village. There will be more difficult journeys waiting for you, dangers and opportunities. Shenyi didn't want to continue to listen to the third generation's long-winded words in front, so hurry up and get the quota after the end to become a real ninja. However, the ceremony still lasted for a long time, and the sky gradually darkened unknowingly, and it was already very close to night. Every child, come up to receive the forehead protection. After wearing the forehead protection, you will no longer be a child. Shenyi rushed to the third generation's side first, picked up the forehead guard and left the practice field directly, planning to go home and have a good sleep. On the way home, a familiar figure appeared and stopped Shenyi. Go home in a hurry, have you really forgotten me? Looking up, it turned out to be Fugaku Uchiha standing in front of him. Shenyi couldn't help but shook his head helplessly. It's really annoying that this guy has been lingering around him all the time. When he was still in the ninja academy, he was troubled by this guy, and now he has become an equal to him, and the ninja has even worsened. Originally, he just sent his subordinates to find fault in the academy, but Uchiha Fugaku was finally able to fight in person. Even if he took the initiative to challenge Kamiya, no one would say that he was a bully. He defeated him openly and let Uchiha Makoto know who is the man he should be close to. Shenyi shook his head and felt very bored. In terms of fighting, Fuyu was not his opponent at all, he was just humiliating himself. So what can I do for you? I'm very busy. I, Uchiha Fugaku, is now challenging you to a duel in the practice field in 5 days' time, life and death or life and death. Shen Yi grinned. Although Fuyu seemed to be a bit annoying at ordinary times, he never thought that he was such a middle school student that he could even say things like life and death. Even if he agrees to such a duel, I believe that after the village finds out, the two of them will not really fight with their lives. For the village, whether it is the demise of Shenye or Fuyu, it is a great loss for the village, losing a combat power that can influence the future. I accept your challenge, but life and death are your own fate, it has nothing to do with me. Being ruthlessly ridiculed by Kamiya, Uchiha Fugaku's face was a little uneasy, red and white at times, but there was no way to attack at this time. All the complaints in my heart can only be buried in my stomach, and I will use them all in the duel to let Shenye know how powerful I am. After saying goodbye to Kamiya, Uchiha Fugaku walked straight to Sandai Hokage's office, although no one was in the office at this time. But as long as the tactics are put on the table, the third generation will naturally see it. This guy is really boring, but it's easy to defeat him with my current strength, it's just that I don't know how much he can bear mentally. Shen Yi was still very worried that if this guy was defeated in front of everyone, it would cause a lot of psychological pressure, and he would end up apologizing with death. But this saves Shenya's mind even more. From now on no one will be idle looking for troubles for him. Perhaps Uchiha Fugaku is born to be the kind of existence that seeks abuse. Only by truly educating him can he recognize the difference between himself and his opponent. He has always been instilled the title of genius ninja, and Uchiha Fugaku doesn't look down on his peers or even some people older than him, let alone Kamiya is still a child. Time passed quickly, and the time for the duel between the two was getting closer. Uchiha Fugaku would practice in the training ground almost every day until late before returning home. Although he scoffed at Shen Yi in his heart, he still had to face the battle with his fullest state. In comparison, Shen Yi was much more relaxed. I just became a ninja, and the village didn't send out any missions. The Ninja Academy no longer needs to go on by itself, and only has nothing to do every day. On this day, Minato heard that Kamiya and Uchiha Fugaku were preparing for a duel, so he hurried to Kamiya's home to inquire about the situation. Shen Yi, how are you preparing? That guy is very powerful. He was already a well-known genius ninja in the village when he was still at the Ninja Academy. I'm not prepared, but I believe that he is not my opponent. Don't you have confidence in my strength? Minato shook his head quickly. He had absolute confidence in Kamiya, but when he saw Uchiha Fugaku in the past few days, he was always in a state of winning. Except for a few people who knew Shen Yi, no one would think that Shen Yi would be Uchiha Fugaku's opponent. Even among the classmates who used to be classmates with Shenya, some people have begun to secretly rejoice that Uchiha Fugaku can teach Shenya a good lesson and combat his arrogance. It is said that that guy will practice until late every day, and has already begun to work hard to improve his strength. Shen Yi shrugged indifferently. He didn't believe that Uchiha Fugaku would directly promote his strength from a lower ninja to a jonin in such a short period of time. Another 2 days passed in the blink of an eye, and many people have already started to walk towards the practice field one after another. Among them, some elite ninjas from the village came to watch, and there were countless Zongnin and Shonin. After all, Uchiha Fugaku's name is known to almost everyone in the village, allowing him to challenge himself, and he is a ninja who has just become a ninja. Everyone is very curious about what kind of character Shen Yi is and what kind of strength he has. Only a very few people really understand that Uchiha Fugaku issued the challenge letter because of his own selfishness, and he just wanted to teach this overconfident guy a lesson. Kamiya, it's time to get up. Isn't today the duel time that you and that kid from the Uchiha family agreed upon? Tsunade shook Shenya's sleeping body, and he was already anxious for him, so many people in the village would be watching. If he was late, it would have a very bad effect. But Shen Yekwan acted as if he didn't hear it, turned over and continued to sleep soundly. You brat, how dare you ignore me? Tsunade grinned, and grabbed Shenya's ear with one hand, twisting fiercely. After feeling the pain, Shenye opened his eyes in an instant, ejected and stood directly on the bed, looking innocently at Tsunade. Sister Tsunade, the pain you made is so painful. Tsunade sighed helplessly. Seeing Shen Yi's innocent expression, he couldn't get angry at all, so he could only hug him into his arms. The village attaches great importance to this duel. You must work hard to let the Uchiha family know how powerful my brother Tsunade is. Don't worry, that guy Fuyu is not enough to watch. Now that he had woken up, Shenyi tidied himself up and walked towards the practice field. The bustling crowd had no way to enter the practice field. Shenyi scratched his head, but he didn't expect it to be such a prosperous world, with more people than the ceremony on the day he was promoted to shinobi. Shenyi has appeared. I don't know who in the crowd yelled, and the boiling people went to quiet down in an instant. The crowd began to disperse slowly, and a passable road slowly appeared in front of Shenyi, and everyone's eyes fell on Shenyi. Although he has already developed the ability to be shameless, he can go wherever he goes with his harmless appearance. But being stared at by so many people at the same time, Shenyi still scratched his head in embarrassment. Fortunately, Minato appeared in time to rescue Shenyi, and the three of them, Mad Dai and Lu Ju, surrounded Shenyi and walked towards the middle of the practice field little by little. At this time, Uchiha Fugaku was already waiting for Kamiya in the middle. His eyes were full of desire to fight, and at the same time there were some sarcasm. Shenyi looked around, and most of the places he could see were familiar faces, former classmates, and some people from the Uchiha family stood in the innermost. The dueling parties have reached the middle of the battlefield. This is where you can play freely. Please take this game seriously. Kamiya had never seen anyone appear between him and Uchiha Fugaku, talking about the rules and results of this duel, but Kamiya was not listening at all. Shenyi, with so many people watching you, I believe you have already thought about what you will face next, so enjoy yourself. Yeah, don't end up depressed because you lost. Anyway, you are also a member of the Uchiha family. The pride of the family and your pride should be bet on it. Stop talking nonsense, I can't wait to trample you under my feet. Shenyi curled her lips and didn't continue to pay attention to Fuyu, but turned her head and nodded towards Tsunade not far away, signaling her not to worry about herself. After receiving Shenyi's signal, Tsunade's heart that had been hanging on his hands sank a little, but he still had a little bit of worry. At the same time, a layer of light appeared around the two duels, which seemed to be some kind of enchantment, preventing outsiders from entering it, and at the same time protecting others from being affected by the aftermath of the battle. The battle begins, and it won't end until one party falls down and admits defeat. Otherwise, the battle will continue, regardless of life or death. The third generation stands at the highest point of the practice field and reads aloud, but everyone knows that once the real face of life and death is really faced, the third generation will come to rescue immediately. Shenyi, die. Fuyu's gaze suddenly became sharp, and he quickly ran towards Shenyi, taking out a shuriken in his pocket. There was an indifferent smile on the corner of Shenyi's mouth, and he folded his arms around his chest quietly waiting for Fuyu to come to him. In the blink of an eye, the shuriken was about to fall on Shenyi's neck. Standing outside and observing everyone, his heart was in his throat for a moment, fearing that the battle would end in this instant. However, a ray of light suddenly appeared around Shenyi, and his figure disappeared in place, and no one could clearly see what happened. Even the third generation who had been watching the battle shook their heads in shock. In their own memory, they had never seen such ninjutsu at all, like an advanced space-time ninjutsu. Do you want me to die just like this? Shenyi's voice appeared behind Fuyu. His face was calm, and he didn't care about what just happened. What ninjutsu do you guys use? This is not the ninjutsu in Konoha village at all. How can you use it so skillfully? There are so many things in the world that you haven't seen. Does everyone have to report to you before they can innovate ninjutsu? What? It turned out to be innovative ninjutsu. After hearing Shenyi say these 4 words outside, everyone gasped. Such a powerful space-time ninjutsu can be created in such a grade. At this time, they finally understood why Fuyu chose Shenyi for the challenge. This was a challenge from a genius ninja to another genius ninja, and they were dissatisfied. Fuyu frowned and didn't continue to argue, just 4 simple words let himself gain the upper hand. Although he is called a genius by the people in the village, Fuyu, who is about to become a chunin, has not yet created a ninjutsu by himself. Since the word of mouth is no match for Kamiya, Fuyu is ready to tell everyone with practical actions what will happen to him if he is angry. With 2 sounds, Fugaku threw the shuriken in his hand towards Kamiya. When he was instructing practice, Fuyu had already learned that Shenyi was just a noob in using shuriken. The two shurikens flew out. In Fugaku's perception, Kamiya could only hide. Even if he chose to fight back, he would use chakra-consuming ninjutsu. But things didn't go as planned. Shenyi just smiled faintly, then pulled out the shuriken faster than Fuyu and threw it into the air. With two clangs, the shurikens collided with each other precisely, changing the direction of the ejection, and finally landed on the barrier and slid slowly to the ground. Fuyu couldn't help being stunned. Reacting in such a short period of time, he could even accurately attack the center of the shuriken. This kind of shuriken use technique, at this time, Fuyu can only achieve such a level by turning on Sharingan. Kamiya is so strong. He can fight Fuyu just after he became a ninja. It seems that we will not be his opponents. Yes, he has such strength just after graduation, and there is no way to stop his growth in the future. Tsunade couldn't help but feel elated when he heard the discussions around him. Shenyi is his younger brother, praised by others, and his elder sister's face is also radiant. Do you think my shuriken is still at that stage? Since you want to challenge me, why don't you get to know me well? Fuyu frowned. All the time, Shenyi's information was reported to him by his subordinates at the Ninja Academy, and he had never personally observed it. Thinking of this, Fuyu couldn't help turning his gaze outside to look at his subordinates. That guy avoided looking at Fuyu. At this time, it was already difficult to get off the tiger. No matter what the result was, he had to fight Shenyi until the last moment before waking up, although Shenyi's basic skills were already very solid. But he has just been promoted to genin, and he can only reserve a small amount of chakra in his body. Fuyu believes that he can stabilize Kamiya in ninjutsu. Our warm-up has almost been completed, and the next thing is today's highlight. You have to enjoy it. Shenyi didn't say anything, but just hooked his fingers towards Fuyu, signaling him to just let the horse come over. Art fire escape ho fireball. Fuyu's expression suddenly became more serious, and the chakra in his body quickly gathered in his mouth as he quickly sealed his hands. Watching his seal movement, Shenyi knew what kind of ninjutsu was about to appear in his sight, and also knew how to deal with it. The 5 types of ninjutsu interact with each other, and water dungeon will be more advantageous in dealing with it. However, Shenyi didn't steal water dungeon from anyone, so he had to find another way. Taking advantage of the time when Fuyu was forming a seal, Shenyi took out 2 shurikens with the mark in his pocket, and threw one directly at Fuyu, while throwing the other in the other direction. Fuyu snorted coldly, thinking that Shenyi wanted to interrupt his not seal, so his body moved a few times to the sides. A huge ball of flames spat out from Fuyu's mouth, swept towards Shenyi, and the billowing heat slapped Shenyi's face. It turns out that this is the feeling of being attacked by Hao's fireball technique. It is really painful. Shenyi shook his head, muttering Yanling softly in his mouth, but quietly waiting for the arrival of the flame without any movement in his hand. In the blink of an eye, the flame was only a few centimeters away from Shenyi, and at this moment, it seemed to everyone that Shenyi had no possibility of dodging. The art of flying thunder god. Shenyi's figure disappeared in place, but surrounded by raging flames, no one except Sandai saw Shenyi's actions, and Fuyu began to feel more confident. You don't naively think that the battle will end just after it starts. Do you want to hurt me with such ninjutsu? Shenyi's voice appeared in Fuyu's ear, and the latter quickly gave up the fire escape ninjutsu with a face of horror, turned around to look at the source of the sound, and found that Shenyi was standing not far from him. And that was where I had just avoided the shuriken. After looking carefully, I found that the shuriken on the ground was different from the ordinary shuriken. I can create space-time ninjutsu. There is nothing unexpected about a small teleportation. Stay vigilant. Shenyi raised his fist and waved it towards Fuyu's face without warning, causing the surrounding air to make a whirring sound. In any case, Fuyu is also a genius ninja of the Uchiha family, and his reaction ability is still very fast. He made his own reaction the moment Shenyi waved his fist. The body suddenly moved a small step to the side, and at the same time raised one arm to cover his face, and the other hand took advantage of the momentum to hit Shenyi's stomach. The corner of Shenyi's mouth smiled slightly, the speed of his fist suddenly increased a little, and the other hand raised up to block Fuyu's attack and landed on it. There were 2 bangs, no one had the upper hand, and everyone was punched hard on the arm. But in comparison, Uchiha Fugaku is obviously more uncomfortable. Under the precise control of Kamiya Chakra, the power walked into Uchiha Fuyu's meridians unknowingly, all of which Fuyu has not felt now. There is such power in such a small grade, it seems that it is the most correct thing to challenge you. Sounding high sounding, to make such a big noise in order to satisfy your own selfishness, in the eyes of others, you are magnanimous. Shenyi curled her lips, fully understanding what was going on in her heart, and had already made up her mind to teach this guy a good lesson, resolutely not giving him a chance to stand up again. Even a genius ninja needs realistic suppression to make him truly recognize himself. Although Fuyu is a villain, Shenyi will not be as stingy as him. But it's okay to be angry with him after the battle, because he already has a complete plan in mind. Stop pretending to be affectionate there, watch the trick. The distance between the two people was very close at this time. Fuyu waved his fist again and rushed towards Shenyi, and the two of them were fighting together in the blink of an eye. People outside stared intently at the battle between the two, for fear of missing any exciting moments. Time passed little by little, neither Shenyi nor Fuyu relaxed. At the same time, the two were on par, and they couldn't tell you apart in terms of physical skills. It seems that Shenyi is not as simple as we imagined. He can continue to fight Fuyu without showing any fatigue. Of course, you don't even look at who's younger brother, how could he be weak with my teachings? Jiraiya stood beside Tsunade and gave a blank look. In fact, Tsunade never taught anything about cultivation. No way, Shenyi and Fuyu are evenly matched in physical skills. Everyone in the audience was shocked that the two had been able to compete for so long. Most of them believed that Fugaku would defeat Kamiya in an extreme time, and some even came here just to see the beauty of Sharingan. Almost no one had confidence in this doll who had just graduated from ninja school for 5 days. However, the facts slapped them hard. The battle situation on the field was basically equal. The solemn expression on Fuyu's face showed that he was struggling at the moment, while Shenyi looked at ease. This kid has only graduated from ninja school for a few days, this is too exaggerated. The opponent is still from the Uchiha family. Look at Fugaku's Sharingan. After the explanation from the onlookers, people who didn't notice looked at Fuyu's eyes one after another. It was a pair of sharing eyes that were well known in the whole village, but Fuyu is just a single Guyu now. But even Shan Guyu has already played a great role in short-distance martial arts duels, but Fuyu doesn't look easy now. Brother, I'm stronger than you even if I didn't eat breakfast, didn't you eat dinner last night? Compared to the shock of the crowd eating melons off the court, Shenyi on the court has a different style of painting, and the whole person is in a relaxed state as if playing a game with a child. Stop being brave, let's bow down to the name of Uchiha Fugaku. Fuyu obviously also realized that his physical skills were not dominant. After an uppercut, he quickly opened the distance between the two. Hehe, is it Huo done again after the distance? I won't be caught casually like last time. I have to admit that Fugaku, who bears the name of the Uchiha family, has a very high combat IQ. In a very short period of time, he has analyzed the areas that Shenyi is good at and specializes in weaknesses. It is a pity that he met Shenyi. Seeing Fuyu retreating to release Huodun, Shenyi did not choose to retreat, but directly bullied him. Although Huodun's ninjutsu is very powerful, it is not so simple to control. The reason why he has to keep a distance is because he is afraid of accidentally hurting himself, and Shenyi uses this to dare to come close to Fuyu. He was betting that Fuyu would not dare to fight with himself in a way that would hurt both sides, and releasing the fire escape at such a close distance would only hurt the enemy by 1000 and himself by 800. However, Shenyi obviously made a wrong bet. Although Fuyu saw Shenyi approaching rapidly, the seal movement on his hands still did not stop, and he even formed seals at a faster speed. Is this kid crazy? Shenyi couldn't help but tremble in his heart, he didn't want to get a disability here. It's just that it's too late to step back now, and Shenyi quickly stretched out his hands to the ninja belt behind him, and then the 4 kunai were thrown by Shenyi to the left and right, and at the same time Fugaku's seal ended. Seeing this scene, Shenyi couldn't help frowning. Through his perception, he found that Fuyu's chakra this time was twice as much as last time, but it was too late to think more, and his body quickly backed away. Art fire escape ho fireball. A fireball larger than Shen Yi's body quickly flew towards Shen Yi, and the temperature on it was terribly high. It's really hard work. As if to avoid injury to himself, Fugaku's fireball was launched at an angle not facing Shenye directly, but towards the ground, and the slight difference in angles allowed Shenye to escape triumphantly. Hao Huoball almost wiped the corner of Shen Yi's clothes and landed in front of Shen Yi. The terrifying power scattered the dust on the arena, even though the ground was so hard that there were some cracks in the arena. It's powerful enough, but it's a pity that it's not accurate enough. Shen Yi turned over and extinguished the flames on his body, and said to Fu Yu resentfully. Really, however, what responded to Shen Yi was not regret, but a voice with a hint of joking. Oops, the scattered dust is the best time to launch ninjutsu. The fireball technique just now is just a cover-up. As if to test Shen Yi's conjecture, a few red lights suddenly lit up in the dust all over the sky, and then flew towards Shen Yi as if they were alive. Fire escape, the technique of impatience. The scattered sparks flew towards Shen Yi from all angles. Even with Shen Yi's strength, it was impossible to rush out from the encirclement in all directions. Good trick. Facing the sparks that surrounded him, Shen Yi first admired Fu Yu's combat IQ, and then a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. However, the people outside the arena couldn't see Shen Yi's expression, they could only see the scene where Shen Yi was about to be surrounded by impatience. With a wave of both hands, the bamboo hat exclusive to Hokage fell to the ground. Come on, Tsunade. Tsunade, who was called by name, was also taken aback. She obviously didn't expect Sandai's reaction to be so big. She just thought that it was enough for Fugaku to teach Shenya a lesson, and she would not use real methods. But after seeing the gradually enlarged Phoenix Fairy fireworks, she realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. That Uchiha boy stop. But the released technique could no longer be cancelled. The 3 generations who had just opened the enchantment hadn't had time to use the water escape, and at least 4 or 5 fireworks had already fallen to Shenya's position. Water escape, water formation wall. A water gun appeared at the place where the flames gathered, and extinguished the raging flames in less than a second, but when Sandai and Tsunade arrived, the figure of Kamiya was completely gone. No, Tsunade was the first to be unable to bear it. Having already lost a younger brother, her feelings for Kamiya were pure. Not only was she looking forward to Kamiya, but she also missed her brother. But now that the person she cherished left again, Tsunade's grief even made her breathless. Pay Shenye with your life. Wait a minute, Tsunade. The call of the 3rd generation did not have any effect. At this moment, Gangsho couldn't listen to anything. Chakra burst out all over his body, and he swung his fist to claim Fu Yu's life. It's just that when she came to Fu Yu, she was so shocked that she couldn't make a sound. The unique mist after the meeting of water and fire blocked everyone's sight, and also made Tsunade's IQ offline, thinking that Shen Yi had been burned to ashes and wanted to avenge him. But Shen Yi is now standing in front of everyone. I saw Fu Yu raised his hands lightly with a frustrated face. His neck was already held up by a kunai, and the person holding the kunai was Shen Yi, who everyone thought was burned to ashes, but the current Shen Yi obviously lost the vigor just now, as black as coal from a fire pit. After a brief shock, everyone realized that Shen Yi had won this competition. Although they didn't know how Shen Yi did it, they knew that the name of the genius was about to change masters. You brat, you're worried about me to death. Tsunade, who was ready to go, vented all his anger on Shen Yi, and pounded Shen Yi's chest with a pair of fists. Of course, it was impossible to use strength, but it was just a symbolic gesture, otherwise Shen Yi would not be enough even if he had 10 lives. Sister Tsunade, you can play lightly, don't you know how strong your hand is? Shen Yi's words made Tsunade a little embarrassed, but the sad atmosphere was also destroyed by Shen Yi's words. Boy, how did you do it? Tell my sister. Hey, let's talk again when we have a chance. After talking about Kamiya, he let go of Uchiha Fugaku, although it is not difficult to see his hatred for Kamiya from the latter's eyes, but the awe is far more than the hatred. Obviously, Shen Yi used his strength to frighten Fu Yu. Fu Yu was not the only one who was shocked. Everyone cheered heartily at the moment. They witnessed the battle of a genius. Although they don't know how they won in the end, there is no doubt that this will be another legendary figure in Konoha. The 3 generations who were not far away saw this scene and did not disturb, allowing Shenye to enjoy the joy of victory to the fullest. Okay, isn't it just a competition? Do you need to be so happy? Let's go. The atmosphere off the court didn't seem to affect Shen Yi on the court at all. At this moment, he just wanted to go home early and change his clothes. He looked like a miner in a coal mine, which was really ugly. Such a potential student really wants others to take it for himself. Far from the rear of the competition field, a gloomy voice sounded, and the person who spoke was Orochimaru with bright eyes. Don't worry, Tsunade is willing to give up such a good seed. Although he may not be a medical ninja. Compared with Orochimaru's greed, Jiraiya is much more free and easy. Although everyone envies such a disciple, but he is close to the water, so he really can't grab it. He, the disciples I will accept in the future must be accepted according to this standard. I'd better choose my research, maybe one day I can help you realize your wish. Really, I have confidence in artificial human technology. That's fine. Jilai also gave Orochimaru a supercilious look. Although he didn't understand this technique, just listening to the name should be a forbidden technique, and even Orochimaru should just talk about it. It's just that Jiraiya thought about what Orochimaru said and then turned around suddenly, but Orochimaru behind him had long since disappeared. I don't really want to fix it. Shen Yi doesn't know what happened in the background. He is now being manipulated by the third generation with a full face of helplessness, and he is looking forward to an early end. And the third generation obviously didn't know what Shen Yi was thinking, and still held up Shen Yi's hand to show off this shining new star to the people off the field. Guessing that everyone's enthusiasm was about the same, the third generation put Shen Yi back, but before leaving, he told him that there might be a task for a while, and then went back to his place to work. And Shen Yi didn't get to rest, and after returning home, Tsunade twisted his ears and asked what happened. Sister Tsunade, don't pull, if you pull your brother, you will become a ninja with one ear. Stinky boy, you didn't even tell your sister, don't sleep until you make it clear today. Seeing Tsunade's serious look, Shenye also realized that it would be impossible to pass the test without concealing it, so he picked up a piece of clean clothes and ran towards the training ground. Not knowing what Shenye was going to do, Tsunade thought he was going to run away, so he chased after him directly. It's just that Shenya's speed is not slow, and Tsunade really missed him for a while, and when Shenya stopped, he had already arrived at the training ground. Why did you bring me here, brat? Didn't my sister say that I want to see what's going on? Then she concentrated on ignoring Tsunade. In fact, Shenyi is not very familiar with this trick, and there is only a chance of success 6 to 7 times if he uses it 10 times. It was just luck just now, but even if it doesn't work, he still has other ways to win the game. Taking a deep breath, Kamiya quickly took the 4 kunai in the ninja bag with both hands and stared at the wooden stake in front of him, and Tsunade was also staring at Kamiya's movements at this moment. The next moment, Shenye moved. With a shake of his hands, the 4 kunai were shot out 2 by 2. First 2 shot towards the top of the wooden post, and then 2 chased towards the first kunai at a faster speed, and then the 4 kunai collided in twos. The 2 that were fired first were directly hit behind the wooden post, and the other 2 were bounced away. This kunai can still be used like this. Tsunade was completely stunned. She had seen countless shuriken manipulation techniques, but this was the first time she wanted to play like this. Afterwards, use Flying Thunder God to teleport to the location where kunai is. Afraid of Tsunade's further questioning, Shenye explained to Tsunade while finding the other 2 kunai, fearing that he would not be able to sleep well. So that's it, the Uchiha family didn't complain about the loss, but the impatience trick just now is obviously trying to put you to death. Hearing this, Shenyi was also taken aback, but resumed his movements in the next second. Isn't it okay? If he is a smart person, he won't pick trouble again in the future. However, Shenyi remembered this matter in his heart. If Fuyu sees that he is not honest in the future, I don't mind letting him experience the feeling of death. It's just that if you do that, you don't know if you will meet Itachi who interested Shenye. Let's go, Tsunade-san. Even though everything has been planned, but now he is still a child, Shenyi can only bury all these plans in his heart, and if things really develop to that point, he can only talk about it at that time. It's just that Tsunade who was following Shenye didn't know what was going on in Shenye's mind. He just felt that Shenye had the strength not for his age, but he had the intelligence for this age. He didn't know how to reason with Shenye. Living in this cruel world, even one's own companions cannot be completely trusted. This is both reasonable and unreasonable for ninjas, but there is no other way in this era. In the end, Tsunade still shook his head, thinking that Shenyi was still a child, and he would have a chance to talk to him in the future. In this way, the two returned home with their own concerns, but what they didn't know was that not long after the two left, a figure with a patterned cat-shaped mask and a big black cloak appeared at the place where the two had just stood. The figure tried again at the place where Shenyi performed kunai's unique skill, but it ended in failure in the end. It's amazing. It seemed to be praising Shenyi, but the figure disappeared in the next moment. After another 3 days of rest, Shenyi's long-awaited mission finally came, and before dawn that morning, Shenyi was awakened from his dream by Tsunade. "What's the matter in such a hurry? Didn't you let the wind out in advance?" "No, it's an urgent mission. It is said that the client just arrived in Konoha not long ago, and immediately released this mission." The sleepy-eyed Shenyi became agitated when he heard that it was an urgent mission. Although the steps were not the same as those in his memory, it wasn't the first time he was on a mission. 10 minutes later, Shenyi came to Hokage's office under the leadership of Tsunade, and there were already 2 other people in the small room. "Tsunade, you go back first, and I will arrange the rest." Tsunade didn't miss it either. She was very relieved about Shenyi's strength. She just told him not to starve on the way, and then went back to prepare the things Shenyi needed for departure. After Tsunade left, the 3 generations of adults said to several people, "You are all leaders in the village, and you should have heard of each other's names. Today is the first time to perform a mission together. When we are on the road, we will learn about each other's strength to facilitate the next mission." Only then did Shenyi carefully observe the 3 people and a dog beside him. Among them, the leader of the team sat at the front with his back to himself, and there was no obvious sign to tell who it was, but he should know it after a while, and the remaining 2 were easy to identify. Among the younger generation of the Hyuga clan, Hinata, whose strength is almost as high as the ceiling, and Inuzuka Claw, who is also not to be underestimated with a ninja dog. When Shenyi looked at the 2 of them, the 2 were obviously observing each other, and the other 2 were strangers to the 3 of them. "Don't worry, teacher, I will definitely do my best to complete this mission perfectly along the way." This voice was so familiar to Shenyi. When the figure turned around, it was Dashawan. As a die-hard fan of Naruto, Kamiya knows all the plots. Now that he has traveled to this world, it is equivalent to knowing the general direction of the future of the ninja world. Although there may be some things that he can't remember, it is absolutely that Orochimaru is not a good person. It's just that now everyone doesn't know the true face of Orochimaru. What a bad luck. Although there was a burst of sadness in his heart, Shenyi still had a surprised expression on the surface, and he seemed extremely excited for Orochimaru to be his team leader. "Although I don't know why I put myself under Orochimaru's hands, Inuzuka Cho and Hinata Nikiza are both the characters who survived to the end of Naruto. Presumably this mission should not be threatening, maybe. The client is Mr. Yumazawa Mukoda from the country of grass. We have already seen the task. The difficulty is between C level and B level. Because there are a lot of things in the village recently, I asked you guys to do it. But with Orochimaru leading the team, and you guys will definitely be fine." "I don't know where the self-confidence of the 3rd generation came from," the young man with a face cheered, and let everyone prepare to go without giving them a chance to argue. "Sister Tsunade, why is Orochimaru leading the team this time?" Shenya tried her best to control her emotions so as not to make strange phone calls, and asked Tsunade in a calm and casual tone. "I heard that Orochimaru seems to be very interested in you. I heard that you will bring your own research with you for this mission, so you came here specially." Tsunade didn't think much about it, but felt a little strange. Orochimaru usually looks like an enemy who hits the door of the house and doesn't look like giving up his own research. Now he came here to pick up the task for a child, which is not like him at all. The speaker had no intention of listening, but when he heard that Orochimaru was coming specifically for him, his hands trembled suddenly when he took the bag Tsunade handed him. Even with the determination of Shenyi, he was a little afraid of being abducted by Orochimaru. Being abducted by Orochimaru is actually not the worst thing in Shenyi's eyes. The worst thing is actually being used for experiments. Who knows whether Orochimaru will throw himself into a secret base to cultivate some strange things. It's okay, Orochimaru just looks a little scary, but his pale face has been like that since I met him, and I get used to it after a long time. After the mission, you will know that Orochimaru is actually still reliable." On the surface, Shenyi calmed down and nodded as if he had been comforted, but in his heart he was always thinking about how he should deal with such a character. Although his current strength has improved a lot, but this strength is definitely not enough when facing the legendary Sannin who can be studied the most and is almost the strongest. After much deliberation, Shenyi didn't come up with any coups, but time waits for no one, and it's time to gather at the entrance of the village while thinking about it. "Sister Tsunade, I'm leaving first, and I will leave the family to you. You can go at ease. When you come back, my sister will treat you to something delicious." This kind of family-like care made Shenyi feel extremely warm, and strengthened his confidence to live in this ninja world no matter what. Shenyi was the last one when they came to the entrance of the village, and it seemed that the three of them had been waiting here for a long time. "I have to say you were really on time." An old man came out from the guard at the gate, and he didn't forget to praise Shenyi when he stood up. "Aren't you late?" "It's fine if you're not late." Shenyi pointed to the pocket watch in his hand. It was just now that the meeting time was reached. To be precise, he came a few seconds earlier. "I spent money on a B-level mission, can such a kid really do it?" The old man arched his back and put his hands behind his back, looking like he was giving advice. "Mr. Meng's Xiangtian, don't worry, even if I'm the only elite Jonin who can complete the B-level mission, you can treat these few as just to accompany you to relieve boredom." Faced with the old man's doubts, Orochimaru hurried up and smiled and said that Konoha was fully qualified for this task. It's hard to imagine that the cold as Orochimaru actually has such a side. Orochimaru's words really refreshed Shenya's previous views on him, but he was still on guard. Meng Xiangtian also snorted when he heard what Orochimaru said, and walked in the front without looking back. "Okay, let's go. This is your first time to participate in a B-level mission. Be careful in everything. This will be a rare and valuable experience for you in the future." Although he was prejudiced against Orochimaru, Shenyi still very much agreed with what he said. "Our mission location this time is the country of grass." After arriving at the parking lot, Mengs will explain the mission to Mr. Tien. "Yes," the three replied in unison. In fact, even without Mengs explaining to the old man Tien, Shenyi probably guessed what kind of mission this time was. Everyone in the ninja world knows to hide their skills and trump cards, at least they don't use them casually at ordinary times, but for Shenyi, who is familiar with almost all moves in the Naruto world, everyone is almost transparent in front of him. The Hyuga family is known as the strongest family in Konoha. Although it was because there was no Uchiha in Konoha later, the ability of Byakugan is undoubtedly unmatched. The Inuzuka family's ninja dog and ninja's combined fighting style can achieve unexpected effects most of the time. But the two have another common feature, that is, the ability to detect is very strong. Whether it is Byakugan or the sensitive sense of smell of the Inuzuka family, they are extremely powerful means of detection or anti-reconnaissance. And these two people, together with the super fast speed he showed to the outside world, and Orochimaru's weird infiltration ability, Shenyi can basically confirm that this mission is almost inseparable. It should be an infiltration operation. However, Mr. Xiangtian seemed not very satisfied with these 11 or 12-year-old children. He didn't really want the four of them to give any explanations along the way, but he just walked in the front with a muffled voice. Only Oshimaru went up occasionally to ask if he needed a rest. This old man is really difficult to deal with, and he didn't say what kind of task it was for so long. Don't discuss the client when you are out on a mission, it will leave outsiders with a bad opinion of Konoha. Although Hinata said to stop Inuzuka-cho, there was a murmur in his heart. After all, until now, except for Orochimaru, I don't know what the mission is. Kamiya, I heard that you singled out Uchiha Fugaku and won. When will you have a chance to compete? On the side, Inuzuka Zuo seemed to feel uncomfortable when he was free, and always wanted to stir up the topic, while Hinata Nichisashi looked sophisticated, as if nothing had anything to do with him. Isn't it required to be vigilant at all times when going out on missions, to save energy for enemies who don't know when they will appear? Although Shenyi also felt that this was boring, but he knew to conserve his energy. After all, the enemies he had to face were not only unknown enemies, but also Orochimaru, who didn't know what he was thinking in front of him. It can be said that Shenyi was very nervous along the way, keeping his eyes on Orochimaru in front of him all the time, while the latter was as leisurely as walking in a vegetable market, and so far he hadn't said anything except the 2 words when he went out. The 2 people on the side thought that Shenyi was always like this because he was a little nervous about his first B-level mission, so they didn't ask too much, but Orochimaru, who was walking in the front, always had an incomprehensible smile on his face. Shenyi's guard made Orochimaru more interested. As one of Konoha's top ninjas, Orochimaru definitely crushed Shenyi in terms of strength, but he didn't want to take coercive measures on Shenyi. As for what he was thinking, maybe only he knew. Just when the 3 were bored, Meng Xiangtian, who was walking in the front, suddenly let out a scream, followed by the sound of an explosion. What happened? Before a few people could react, many figures suddenly appeared around them and surrounded the 3 of them, but Orochimaru, who had been walking in the sight of several people at this critical moment, suddenly disappeared. It can't be the people under Orochimaru. Strangely, when Shenyi faced these people, the first thing Shenyi thought of was not how to face them, but what would happen if Orochimaru suddenly attacked from a corner. In fact, we can't blame Kamiya for being so wary of Orochimaru, because Kamiya, who is familiar with history, knows everything that happened in Naruto. After experiencing the Second Ninja World War, Orochimaru no longer focuses on the village. He thinks about how to live forever, immortality, and those strange experiments. For those researches, he often finds some ninjas in the village to do experiments, but almost no one survives. Just as Shenyi was thinking, the 2 people and the dog beside him had already started to move. Blind eyes. Kuromaru, let's go. The 2 of them started fighting separately, only Shenyi did not move, just holding the kunai in his ninja bag in his hand, always ready to deal with emergencies. There were not many enemies surrounding him, and with the strong combat power of Hinata and Inuzuka Zuo, they quickly wiped out all the enemies who rushed up. Seeing the enemy army all over the place, Shenyi's stomach was a little tumbling. In the ninja world, such things are definitely commonplace, but for Shenyi, he grew up in a peaceful environment in his previous life, and he has never had such a close contact with death after coming to the world of Naruto. At this moment, he is just trying not to spit out his breakfast. I'll go see how Mr. Xiangtian is doing. Shenyi found an excuse and left the bloody combat area. When he came to the place where Meng Xiangtian screamed, he found that there was no one there, only serious explosion marks left on the ground. Could it be that it was blown up? But I have never heard that there are things like landmines in the world of Hokage, and why is Orochimaru missing? Shenyi kept looking around, but there was nothing in front of him except this big pit. However, when he was searching for their task-entrusting person, his feet suddenly softened, and then a fireball that was no less powerful than Fuyu Nejiaohao came from under his feet. With a groan in his heart, Shenyi activated the Flying Thunder God technique before he had time to think about it. Boom! There was another loud noise, and Shenyi's embarrassed figure rolled and appeared behind Inuzuka Claw. What's going on, Shenyi? Inuzuka Cho was terrified by the loud noise at first, and then the sudden appearance of Kamiya from behind also made her heart skip a beat. Shenyi got up and patted the ashes on his body and said, "There is an explosive in front, it should be the kind buried in the bottom, as long as it goes up, it will explode. If it weren't for my special kunai that I gave to you 2 before, I guess I will stop cooking now." Hinata on the side tied up the surviving people and walked towards Shenyi. Doesn't that mean that the client has already? Shenyi also nodded helplessly. According to the current situation, it seems to be the case, but the explosion just now is quite far from Orochimaru. Besides, with his strength, it is not difficult to escape even if he is in the center of the explosion. How could he disappear? Just when the 3 were puzzled, a familiar gloomy voice sounded from above everyone's heads. Mr. Xiangtian can now trust the strength of these little guys. When the 3 of them looked up, they found that Dashimaru was standing on a big tree beside him, looking down at a few people, and the person next to him was not Yumezawa Mutoda. After hearing Orochimaru's voice, the other 2 were obviously relieved, but Shenyi actually hoped that Orochimaru would ascend to heaven as soon as possible. Although Orochimaru wanted to contribute to the village in the later stage, his thinking is very dangerous now. HMPH, it's just a bunch of brats. Besides, if I didn't realize it, I'd be a handful of ashes now. Yes, but there is still me. After hearing what Orochimaru said, the stubborn old man finally nodded reluctantly. After Mr. Xiongtian nodded, Orochimaru lifted him up with one hand, and then jumped directly from the top of the tree. Inuzuka Claw still had that violent temper, and asked in a questioning tone when he came up, "So these people were sent here to test our strength?" She seemed to be fine during the battle just now, but Kuromaru was stabbed at the corner of her mouth. Although Kamiya checked the wound, it wasn't very deep, but the bleeding seemed serious. Fortunately, Tsunade brought a special medical kit, and Kuromaru's wound had already been treated briefly by Kamiya. "We didn't find these people. They were indeed sent by the enemy. This is about your mission this time." After finishing speaking, Orochimaru looked at Umezawa Mutoda, and motioned for him to tell about this mission. Cough cough. Meng Xiongtian on the side also understood the meaning of Orochimaru, and coughed lightly to signal everyone to turn their eyes away from the prisoner. "There is a mountain next to the village where I live, and there is a rare ore called Thunderstone in it. Thunderstone can be used to do many things that the outside world can't imagine, including making some weapons, or providing convenience for our lives." Speaking of this, Meng Xiongtian paused, his expression gradually becoming a little disappointed. Passing by this loss only lasted for a short while, and then began to explain to several people. "However, an organization specializing in weapons has taken a fancy to the thunderbolt near our village. At first, it wanted to buy the entire mountain, but this is the only support in our village. Without this thunderstone, we can barely survive a season. So if you don't sell it, they will come and grab it." Unable to stand the old man's slow speaking speed, Inuzuka Claw on the side answered the question directly. "After all, this kind of thing is not uncommon in entrusted tasks. There are many people who fight for rare resources, so someone will come to entrust and hope that someone can help them deal with it. Not just robbing, they even arrested people in our entire village. The men were taken to work as coolies, and the women were used for their enjoyment. As for the old people like us, they didn't care about our life or death." Speaking of Meng Xiongtian's eyes filled with tears, it is obvious that there are many sad stories in it. It's just that Shenye was not deceived by the tears. After careful analysis, he took out the ninja manual he carried with him and looked at it carefully for a while and asked, "Shouldn't this be considered an A-level task?" Said, Shenyi also pointed to the task classification guide on the first page, which was also clearly marked. The classification of helping other countries or villages to solve problems is A-level. Now there is only one situation, and that is that the old man lied about the mission level in order to save money. Shenyi also shook his head in his heart. This kind of thing often happened in Hokage, but it happened to him before he knew how uncomfortable it was. The classification of tasks does not always follow the rules and regulations in this kind of manual. This time the task applied to Mr. Tien is indeed an A-level task, but it was downgraded to a B-level task by the task analyst. Orochimaru's explanation made Shenye feel a little strange, but since it has been carefully analyzed, it means that the task this time is not very difficult, as long as you continue to do it. So what is our mission this time? Hinata Risai, who has been silent all the time, really can't stand it anymore. If he doesn't stop it, the old man will probably cry until tomorrow. So I hope Konoha's ninjas can rescue all the people in our village. It doesn't matter whether Lei Mai can be taken back, as long as the people in our village are safe. Meng Xiongtian finally stopped crying, but he still twitched when he spoke. Where did these people come from? Someone finally remembered these captives, and Shenyi brought a person who looked like the leader in front of the crowd and said, "This group of people should be the people in the organization you mentioned." Although there were more than a dozen people in the blocking team this time, their strength was really not enough. A dozen people made a sneak attack but did not leave any injuries to the three of them. This was done when Orochimaru disappeared all the way. Shang Tian obviously didn't know how to deal with these people. He just turned his hesitant eyes to Orochimaru, and the latter smiled evilly, obviously having an idea in his heart. "You guys go ahead first. I guess there will be no more people in a while. I will deal with these people." Although they were very curious about Orochimaru's next behavior, Hizashi and Naruto both chose to obey Orochimaru's words and took Mr. Mukoda on their way. while Kamiya did not act with the three of them on the grounds of checking whether there were any enemies around, turned around and ran in another direction alone. After finding that a few people were not paying attention to him, Shenye circled around for a while and then returned to the original place. Regarding the actions of Orochimaru, Shenye felt that he had to monitor him. After all, leaving such a scourge in the village is like a time bomb, and it would be great if evidence could be found to arrest him sooner. Through a layer of leaves, Shenye hid his breath almost perfectly, only showing one eye to observe Orochimaru's every move, but the next action of Orochimaru directly surprised Shenye. This Orochimaru's ninjutsu is very disgusting to Shenye, but seeing it on the screen and seeing it in person is really a different experience. I saw Orochimaru didn't know what kind of seal he received, and he turned into a body more than twice as tall, especially with a big mouth that was the size of a person, and he swallowed them all. What is strange is that even though Orochimaru swallowed them all, there was no change in size, as if there was another space in his stomach, which is really weird. However, just after Orochimaru swallowed everyone, he had no intention of leaving at all and stood there laughing wildly. The bursts of terrifying laughter were so penetrating that Shenye thought he had been discovered. "Don't hide, I've seen you a long time ago." It turned out to be really discovered. But now one can imagine what kind of treatment they will receive if they go out, maybe they will be made into specimens by Orochimaru somewhere. When Shenye was struggling, a figure suddenly fled from the bushes under him, splitting into three and fleeing in three directions halfway. Want to run? No way. Since he had already discovered the man's traces, it was impossible for him to run away easily. Orochimaru wriggled like a snake with his lower body. Although it didn't look fast, he caught up with the man in an instant. The figure was also taken aback, obviously did not expect the opponent to be so strong, but after a moment of loss of consciousness, he threw the two shurikens in his hand towards Orochimaru. More than a dozen shurikens flew from three directions. It is estimated that ordinary people can only step back and let this person go, but no one in Orochimaru, like a snake, dodges all the dozen shurikens at an angle that is impossible for ordinary people. Seeing this, the figure panicked again, but it was a pity that Orochimaru's figure was already close in front of him. Before he could react, Orochimaru's hands turned into countless small snakes and grabbed all three figures back. The strength gap is clear at a glance. "Say, who are you and why are you spying on me?" Orochimaru, who captured all three figures, also changed from a big snake back to a human form, but the little snake on his hand still didn't change back, and even the little snake on it screamed more fiercely when Orochimaru interrogated him. "HMPH, Konoha's ninja has tricks, but do you think I will give in if I do this?" The man who spoke in the middle bit hard after finishing speaking, and immediately foamed at the mouth and lost consciousness. It seemed that there should be something like a poisonous capsule in his mouth. After the man in the middle passed out, the other two figures turned into two puffs of white smoke and disappeared, which turned out to be this man's avatar technique. Orochimaru didn't show any expression when he saw the person in front of him die directly in front of him. It seemed that he had known the fate for a long time. After looking around for a week, he didn't care about the person's body and ran in the direction of the three of them. It wasn't until Orochimaru's figure disappeared from sight that Shenye jumped down from the tree and walked straight to the corpse. Out of curiosity about the mission, Shenye searched the man all over, but he didn't have anything on him that could prove his identity. There was only one glowing stone that looked quite special. It was carefully protected by this person in his pocket, and it was kicked into his arms by Shenye directly, and then he followed in the footsteps of Dashuan to find his teammates. After returning to everyone's side, the hind paws directly leaned forward and asked, "How is it? Do you have any new discoveries?" Shenye secretly touched the rock in his pocket and shook his head resolutely. "There are no enemies anymore, it seems that the previous wave is all." "What? So weak?" After hearing Shenye's words, Joe obviously felt that this task was too boring, and even his tone was tinged with disdain. "Hurry up and save those villagers and end it quickly. It's better to be careful. I don't know what strength the people over there are. Although they are not ninjas from other countries, they should not be underestimated." Riza still looks calm, and this time Shenye also supports Riza unconditionally. After Orochimaru dealt with the peeking person just now, Shenye always felt that this task was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. The daily difference is right. We must maintain a high degree of vigilance for the task. As long as it is not completed, we must maintain this state until it is completed. Yes, I know Mr. Orochimaru. How did you deal with those people? HMPH, you don't want to end the mission early at this time. Regarding Inuzuka Cho's question, Orochimaru just smiled slightly, and then changed the topic, but this transfer was really a bit stiff. After more than 3 days of rushing, everyone finally arrived at Meng's Xiongtian's village. What greeted them was not the paradise that Xiongtian said, but the smell of war everywhere. There are forcibly destroyed doors and collapsed small houses everywhere. There is no one on the street in broad daylight, and even blood clots can be vaguely seen in the corners. Faced with this scene, Meng's Xiongtian was no less shocked than the others, and his face was full of disbelief. It seemed that the whole village had undergone earth-shaking changes during the few days when he was out. But if you want a ninja, superb acting skills are not enough, you also have enough knowledge. Even though Shenye and the others understand that the old man is pretending, they don't want to expose it, they just want to see what he will say next. I saw the old man running back to a house that was almost demolished and started searching, calling someone's name while searching. Long, where are you, Long? But what awaited him was doomed to be silence. Mr. Shang Tian, if you have something to say, sitting on the ground is not good for your health. Even though he knew it was a performance, Shenyi still stepped forward to help the old man up and asked, "Who is Long? If you don't mind, you can tell us her general appearance, and we can help you find her." "Long is my daughter. My wife left early. I raised my daughter alone. I am already an old man. I have no hope in this life. I pin all my hopes on Long, but now." Speaking of Shang Tian, he was about to cry again. Seeing this, everyone hurried forward to comfort him, but they exchanged glances behind their backs, obviously realizing that this matter was not simple. 10 days ago, before I set off from home, I told her to hide and not to come out no matter what happened, because those people would be taken away as long as they were not elderly and children, but now that Long is not here can only mean that she was taken away. Inuzuka Claw, who had been standing outside the hut looking around, walked in at this moment and comforted him. "Don't worry, if you just went out, do you have anything for your daughter? I can help you find her." After hearing Inuzuka Zuo's words, Meng's Xiongtian was startled, but this shock seemed more like fright than surprise. It's just that after being stunned for a moment, he quickly responded, yes. After speaking, he got up and brought a somewhat worn scarf over and handed it to Claw, and Claw directly handed the scarf to Kuromaru without hesitation. "This scarf smells so weak that it's difficult to track it down. Is there anything you've used recently?" The dog is talking. Mr. Mukoda, who saw Kuromaru talking, looked like he had seen a ghost. This time was the only time he showed his true feelings. "It's okay, this is my partner, it's not uncommon to be able to talk in the world of ninja beasts." After being shocked by Kuromaru, Mr. Mukoda calmed down slowly, but then fell silent again. Obviously he did not expect such ability among the little devils he looked down upon. Looking at Meng's Xiongtian's tangled face, Shenye knew that if he wanted to maintain the lie, he needed more lies, and knew that he didn't know how to make it right in the end. If Xiongtian told some more lies, everyone would have to go back home. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.